Nepal's former king Gyanendra received a huge welcome upon his return at the Kathmandu airport, with thousands of supporters chanting slogans and demanding the restoration of Nepal's monarchy. Now, as the pro-monarchy agitation swell, we take a look at the life of Nepal's last ruler and whether or not he can be reinstated. On Sunday, a sea of supporters was seen raising placards, waving flags, and sloganeering in favor of Nepal's former king Gyanendra Shah. Nepal's political landscape has been marked by instability since the monarchy was abolished. The growing dissatisfaction with the current democratic system has led to a
Looks like we lost the video. Sorry, guys. Abby, are you there? I can't see what's going on here. Sorry, guys. My camera's not working this week. And apparently it's not the only thing that's not working. I think Abby may have frozen. We may have lost her. She's the one playing the video, so I tried to add her to stage here, and it seems like she's just been frozen. So we're just gonna have to wait it out. I'm sure it will resolve itself.
I had to restart my computer, and for some reason it grabbed someone else's Wi-Fi instead of the one sitting right next to me.
To Tribhuvan International Airport
So because of that, I'm going to start this over. I apologize.
No worries. Oh, I gotta take that off. No wonder why I forgot to take off overlay. I'm like, why can't I see? Oh, what a great start today. How's it going, everyone?
Yeah. Wonderful start. It's going good. It's going good. Okay, so I fixed the issue. I don't know why when I restart, I'm going to have to remember that. It grabs someone else's Wi-Fi, and I should go on their Wi-Fi and like add their printer and print them a message like, lock down your Wi-Fi. Okay, so because they probably don't know, it's probably some elderly person or something.
Right, that doesn't happen with anybody else's Wi-Fi as long as they got a password, right? It doesn't automatically.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. Anyway. Okay, so I'll start it over. Apologies for that. Here we go.
A huge welcome upon his return at the Kathmandu airport, with thousands of supporters chanting slogans and demanding the restoration of Nepal's monarchy. Now, as the pro-monarchy agitation swell, we take a look at the life of Nepal's last ruler and whether or not he can be reinstated. On Sunday, a sea of supporters was seen raising placards, waving flags, and sloganeering in favor of Nepal's former king Gyanendra Shah. Nepal's political landscape has been marked by instability since the monarchy was abolished in 2008. The growing dissatisfaction with the current democratic system has led to a resurgence of pro-monarchy sentiment. Major issues like corruption, economic hardship, and a lack of political stability has prompted many citizens to reconsider their stance on monarchy. An estimated 10,000 royalists blocked the main entrance to Tribhuvan International Airport as he returned from a tour of Western Nepal. So who is Gyanendra Shah, and why is there a growing clamor for his reinstatement? 77-year-old Gyanendra Bir Bikram Shahdev was born in Kathmandu. He was the last king to rule Nepal from 2001 to 2008. He ascended to the throne following the royal massacre in 2001, in which his brother, King Birendra, and 8 other members of the royal family were massacred by Crown Prince Dipendra. The investigation team concluded that the Crown Prince was solely behind the attacks, prompting Gyanendra, who was not there at the time, as next in line for the throne. As his nephew lay in a coma, Prince Gyanendra was named regent. However, after Dipendra's death on 4th June 2001, Gyanendra resumed the throne. Gyanendra ruled as an absolute monarch till 2008, and in the early years of his reign, the new king faced massive opposition. He dissolved Nepal's parliament in 2002 and assumed all executive powers. He also imposed state of emergency and restricted civil liberties. Now, in 2006, King Gyanendra reinstated Nepal's parliament and faced challenges from Maoist insurgents in Nepal. He then abdicated the throne on May 28, 2008. But despite the growing support, Nepal's former King Gyanendra is yet to comment on the renewed calls for his return. Many political analysts believe his chances of regaining the throne remain slim, as the republic is constitutionally enshrined and mainstream political parties continue to oppose reinstating of the monarchy. Now, for more on this, our correspondent Saloni Murarka has sent us this report from Kathmandu. Take a look.
Over the past few months, there has been increase in number of public participation in the
I'm not sure how
pro-monarchy
much more we
rallies
need to
led
keep playing
by
this.
Rashtriya
We could
Prajatantra
maybe.
Party.
I thought it was only 4 minutes. Oh, it's only one more minute. Okay, we might as well let it finish then. Sorry,
Other pro-monarchy forces. The RPP, which is pro-monarchy forces. The RPP, which is the fifth largest party in the parliament, has been the forefront in the pro-monarchy movement in the country with the backing of some small groups and individuals. The Rashtriya Prajatantra Party aims to jolt or shake the mainstream and pro-Republican forces into giving some political space to the former king Gyanendra Shah. Meanwhile, all the mainstream political parties are in a fix. The ruling and the opposition party members have issued warnings to the pro-monarchy forces and even to the former king to respect the political system set in 2008. The rallies that are being carried out across the country, and especially in the capital, is to reinstate the former king as the head of the state. Saloni Murarka for WION, World is One in Kathmandu, Nepal.
So you're muted there, Abby. So I hope that provides a bit of context that we can start from.
That music was kind of groovy.
Oh.
Yeah, so if you haven't noticed, we're going to be talking, well, he's going to be talking about Nepal today because I'm not versed on the subject and he's been doing a lot of research. So, if Michael's on the research train, you're going to learn a lot today. I know I will. I'll just comment as much as possible, but I probably won't comment that much because I don't know anything about it.
Right. That's okay, but I'm sure whatever we uncover a bit today will still kind of people will have an inevitable first impression based on what they hear. So it's valuable just to see. So this is what I've kind of come across as far as what I understand is happening. So what do you think about it? And then you can tell me your little first impression there. So.
Yeah, like it's already a little confusing to me. So I guess my first question, which I'm sure you're going to uncover is the pro monarchy supporters. Like, are they larger than the pro government supporters or not? That is that camera closed in or
that's a great
only
question.
On one street?
That's an important question. I'm glad you asked it like out the gate because no, they are not like a popular force in the country.
Okay.
They're very much a more like an insignificant minority, but then there's some kind of money, power, and influence. There's some backing from some certain international figures. Whether or not they're actually a threat, they're the kind of political party that they're like the Hindutva fascists in India and the State Department in the U.S. have an interest in weaponizing this kind of movement to try and bring it back. I just find it extremely ironic that there is like they're trying to pull off a so-called democratic revolution and trying to reinstate absolutist monarchy, dictatorship of a monarchy. But then this is how they get around it. They say, "Oh, the monarchy respects the democracy of the multi-party system. So what do you need a monarchy for at all if there's a multi-party system to run the country? There is absolutely no reason for an obsolete monarchy to have any place in governance whatsoever.
Well,
Strong anti-monarchist stance. So,
well, I agree, but I mean, I've asked this question. I asked this question several times in New York City because I was working with some people from the UK, and in the UK, they love the royal family, and they think they are so important. Exactly. And I'm like, well, what are they important for? Well, because they represent the country and they go out and do humanitarian things. And I'm like, oh okay.
And you believe that? You know, this one, it's really bad like for the psychology of the people to have a monarchy at all. This is where they should be abolished. And if they have effectively been abolished, there is no standing to reinstate it. It's been abolished. It's the will of the people to have this gone forever, not brought back when you think that they feel like having it back or something. No, there is no will of the people anyway to have it back either. And there are certain factions that are pushing it, right? So,
but Lane says the BBC blasts the royal subliminals all day long. I've never heard them do that, but I don't watch BBC all the time or that much either. So
I can't stand
take your word for it.
Stay away from it. Yeah.
Rondo says no, they do not do that. So we have conflicting arguments here. They are a noble Roman house that manages that particular territory of Rome.
Yes, this is the thing about monarchists too, is they act like they are they're not so much involved with the other monarchies around the world, right? Our monarchy is about our people and our way of life, blah blah blah. But really, when you look at them historically, they are like an international cabal. They do not stand alone. They require each other to legitimize each other. So someone like the King of England, for example, would benefit from a resurgence of a monarchist kind of support for a monarchy anywhere, because it bolsters in the minds of people that you're better off with this conservative idea of having a big daddy politician there to look over you in a paternalistic sense, or to watch over the country and care for it, even though that's not what they do. They're parasites.
I forget Jacqueline's in the UK. She says, oh, they do not, Abby. There's plenty of people in the UK who don't want a monarchy, but the monarchy is the linchpin of the British establishment, and they'll never get rid of it. So I'm sure there are plenty of people who don't want it. I was just speaking about the people that I met at my at a job, and this was like, when did I? Oh, this was 10 years ago. I was at that job, and I was able to talk to them in detail about it, and that's what they told me. Now, they wanted it, but, they can't speak for the entire country. Like, we don't want a two-party system, but that's what has been established, and that's what we got, and I'm not going to say we'll never get rid of it, because I don't want to put that into the air. I want to get rid of it.
This is the thing, right? That when we look at the obvious necessity of abolishing a monarchy, then we look at what the historical precedents that have been set of all the nations that have done away with their monarchy. Number one example being the United States, right? And that's kind of a disaster shit show, right? So then it gives, unfortunately, ammunition to these ridiculous monarchists who otherwise have no logical position whatsoever, right? But when they can point at something like the shit show, the fuck of the United States, whatever, Congress in action and such, then they can just say, look, this is what you get without us, right? You need us. And it's the lie. But we have to make democracy actually function in order to prove to them that there is a better way of governance. It's not an easy thing.
And then, so back to this video you were showing, right? Like, I got a little confused, but I was listening to the timeline, and I said, oh, this is going to be so interesting when he gets into I don't know how far back you're going to go, but it was just giving my brain just went ding, ding, ding. Like maybe we can learn something from what Nepal did in the past about what is possibly happening to our future here in America. It just it was giving inklings of fascism to me.
Yeah.
Did I take that correctly? I was trying to follow it
Yeah.
and play on my phone with the people in the chat.
This in no way is a positive development for Nepal. It is.
Okay.
I'm 100% certain that this is a color revolution and it is a step backwards for the people. And it really is actually one of those crucial times for. They have yet to solidify this color revolution, so there's still time to, let's say, push back, to put it mildly, right?
Hmm.
Because this is need to push back and put them on their ass at this point, right? Because they're fully pretending like this is the will of like the Gen Z protesters, right? And then they're going to annihilate whatever prosperity that the country's managed to gain in the last few decades, and they're going to do what we've seen happens to every country that the West, like the U.S., manages to get a color revolution, right? Like Ukraine, they had their color revolution on behalf of the United States, where funded by them, right? And it destroys the country, right? How many other examples? Syria, right? There's that color revolution that successfully was achieved, overthrew Bashar al-Assad, and now the country's in worse state than ever before. So to be naive about this as a citizen of whatever country it's happening to, and just kind of believe the narrative, it's actually extremely dangerous. So when people are talking about people need to be banned for inciting violence or whatever, you know, sometimes when your country's been there's a color revolution been taken over your country, there's a certain kind of incitement of violence that becomes necessary. Like with the American revolutionary spirit, is that you have the right, if your government refuses to stops representing you, it's like written into your way of life that you have the right to restore the proper will of the people.
So so just in case, I'm pretty sure our audience knows, but maybe if somebody is watching later, I just want to. I looked up color revolution so I could just give this little snippet so they'll know what that is. Okay. So color revolutions are much more than a catchy title applied to popular movements that share certain aspects of their nature. In every case, these revolutions occurred only because of support by organizations and entities external to the organic movements on the ground. The United States has played a significant role, overtly and covertly, in every color revolution since the early 2000s. A practice that was not out of step with many of our clandestine operations since World War II. So, just so people know. So it's basically, I've seen it called like nonviolent protest, but I don't necessarily believe that. I've never heard that. I've never heard a color revolution put in terms of. Usually they're just nonviolent and.
Well, I don't think there's anything about them that has to be nonviolent. I feel like the simplest definition is color revolution is just a fake revolution. It's in every way just like a real revolution, except it's not truly a revolution of the people. It is run by these oligarchs that are. There's a famous movie. I think it's called The Leopard. There's a saying in that. It's a movie about like a liberal revolution in Italy, right? And so the bourgeoisie, whatever, the aristocrats in that movie, they say everything has to change so that everything can stay the same, and that's essentially what a color revolution is.
Yeah, I feel like there's when I looked it up to just give a little blurb. It was hard for me to find one that like made sense because it looks like a lot of propaganda because there are a lot of the places, a lot of the links are defining it as a peaceful overthrow of the government or nonviolent. And I'm like,
Right. Well,
I never knew it to be that.
main perpetrator of these color revolutions has the power and the motive to try and manipulate the definition of the word color revolution in and of itself. You know, and this is why we can't trust our search engines, like, basically at all. We need extreme critical thinking, not just dabbling in it a little bit here and there when we feel like it. You know, you have to be vigilant. You have to basically be paranoid that they're out to get you to think like all the wrong things, because that is essentially what they're doing. That's where it's important. We've got all this conversation about censorship going on in the West, and a lot of us, we're usually, like you and me, I think in general, we would be anti-censorship, right? Pro free speech. But then it's important to point out that the reason for this revolution, color revolution in Nepal, the catalyst that was the trigger for it all, was the government was trying to roll out a social media ban of like Twitter, like Google, YouTube, all the big ones that we know and use, right? That we trust so much, right? We all hate these fucking apps and shit anyways. Those of us who've dealt with them for decades. But we want to force them onto other countries they're active, like these platforms should be banned because they are participating in overthrowing a country's like government. So if you're a corporation and you try to overthrow a country, guess what? I don't care what kind of industry you're in, you deserve to be banned. That simple. It's not so much about free speech and censorship right at that point. It's about a nation with sovereignty has the right to with safeguard its own interests. You know, national security. What?
Is that what it's about?
That's what it's about.
Jacqueline has jokes too. She's glad a Canadian knows how to spell the word color. To answer your question though, Jackie, so I looked it up. So when was the first documented color revolution? And I'm not, like, it's the AI overview says that the concept of, and it's spelled COLOR here, the concept of color revolution as we know it today first emerged in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, especially concerning post-Soviet and Eastern European states. The first documented instance that serves as a direct predecessor is often cited as the 1986 People Power Revolution in the Philippines, sometimes called the Yellow Revolution. So I don't know if that's the...
No, I'd say the first color revolution was in ancient history. This kind of concept, while it may have had a different name or no name at all, like this concept has been occurring like since 3,000 years ago, kind of thing, if not farther back. There's been
I guess they're looking for like in modern times, but it does. Yeah, if we wanted to go back, it does go back way farther than that. So I could try to find that. It might take me a little bit of time.
Rondo's comment here, I think, clarifies things nicely. Color revolution in the same way as color of law. If you look up that term too, that is a basic, basically the gist of the meaning of it. You know.
Sure. So it says color. There's a little thing flying in here harassing me. Where'd it go? It's just quicker to do the AI mode, but we also have to take that with a grain of salt. The term color of law refers to an act committed by a government official that has the appearance of legality, but is in fact an illegal misuse of power. It is an abuse of authority that occurs when an official's position enables him to commit a criminal or unconstitutional act.
Right. So let's not get hung up too much on this.
I have other video.
Yeah, I was wanting to, before I get into the articles that I was going to share, I thought maybe we should just do all the videos first, and now I think not just about. Sorry, I should have. I got to tell you where to skip ahead to in this, because he starts off this video with some completely unrelated stuff. You got to skip ahead to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. But so, setting this conversation about the monarchy stuff aside, it's somewhat important to talk about the Maoist history of Nepal, and about the history of Maoists in general, like all around the world. So another topic one day I'm going to have to learn about is the Naxalites in India. So I'm sure that they're like a Maoist insurgency that's ongoing in India, and so I'm sure whatever's going on with the Maoists in Nepal and the Maoists in India is quite interrelated, just to put it plainly. But I have yet to go into that line of research, so we'll save that for another day. But
okay. We're gonna have to circle back to this, Cobra. I don't know what's going down, but something's going down in the chat. Okay.
Sorry to be neglecting the chat a little bit, but I'm just trying to focus on getting out what's important, right? Because what I've caught here, this is an American Maoist, kind of. I guess they're affiliated with the DSA in the U.S. I don't really know too much about all of this stuff. I'm trying to learn as I go. But what I've heard from the video that he made last week that I'm sharing with you now is he was not calling it a color revolution. He was trying to, I think, naively tell his viewers that this is like a revolution of the people, right? And he was basically, I feel he was being tricked by the media into believing that there's a real revolution happening when in fact it is quite the opposite. And so I just wanted to show this as a bit of a warning when we're trying to get new people trying to get interested in socialist, communist politics. It's important to get your facts right, to actually adhere to the theory like you're talking about it, and not get it wrong, basically, because when you get it wrong and we trust you, we all get it wrong. So sorry to be like throwing. Yeah, Cobra's saying I'm Maoist. I love BRG. Exactly, right? So I was disappointed to see this, but then I'm going to show you guys Brian Berletic's video after this, and we're going to do a little bit of a comparison there, as far as, well, this guy says it's a real revolution, but what does this guy have to say? And I feel like Brian Berletic did an excellent job in dismantling the narrative that this revolution should be treated like a real revolution. But let's let the videos speak for themselves.
Okay. Here we go.
Be free to be who they are. So, to Nepal, members of the governing elite were personally targeted in the unrest in Kathmandu. The homes of several former prime ministers were set on fire. Apparently, one of these former prime minister's wives was burned to death in one of these fires. And yeah, from a human standpoint, it's not good to think about a woman being burned alive, but also on the other hand, the masses will not show any sympathy to you if you live at their expense. So Ravi Lakshmi Chitrakar, the wife of former Prime Minister Jalanath Khanal, was critically burned in one attack, according to a leader of Mr. Khanal's party. Mr. Oli, that's the former Prime Minister from the CPN-UML, Communist Party of Nepal, United Marxist-Leninist Party, who, if I recall correctly, was forced to resign because the people were literally preparing to lynch him if he did not do so. So his house was also set on fire, as were the houses of two other former prime ministers, Pushpa Kamal Dahal, known to the world as Prachanda, and Sher Bahadur Duba. The residence of Ramesh Lekhak, the home minister, who resigned on Monday after accepting moral responsibility for the 19 deaths, was also burned. So, yeah, the masses are not buying hollow-ass apologies. They want you gone. Videos posted on social media showed helicopters airlifting ministers from their quarters in the government's main administrative building. So yeah, they're basically evacuating all these people because the people are literally going to fuck you up. This is Nepal's parliament. Yeah, someone said that it looks like a warlord's house. It does, but that's their parliament. And of course, because these are Zoomers, they have to aura farm.
आरंभ होगा उसकी ताकत मेरा क्रोध उसका अहंकार और मेरी जिद के बीच ये जंग का ऐलान है anytime anywhere anybody I am
That is a grenade launcher that they've seized from the police.
ready. अब एक नया युद्ध
And people are calling this a color revolution. This is not. This is a mass uprising. Okay, this is not a color revolution. Stop. Like that's. Do you have any idea how racist that is? Like the people do not need People do not need Americans to tell them that it's all right to rebel. Mao, like Nepal is literally overrun with Maoists. Okay, many of which have guns. Like there were literal Maoist factions that refused to disarm after the peace deal. They're in the jungle, and almost universally they are supporting the in rebellion because OG taught us that it's right to rebel. So not everything is a fucking color revolution. Do color revolutions happen? Yes. Does the American government profit off chaos? Yes. But also, like, it's right to rebel. You cannot just attribute every single mass uprising to the hidden hand of the white man in Washington, D.C. That is extremely racist. Plus, the organs that are usually used to support these color uprisings have been defunded and gutted by the Trump
Right. So I think that's maybe a good point to be pausing it there. I think that's established well enough. You need to, for the purposes of this video, what his position is there. I think he made some good points. Right. Seems like he's. When I first watched, I was like, "Wow, okay, interesting." But now I think we need to share the Brian Berletic video. And
That
kind
one
of
is going to take me a second to cue it.
right. I mean, he is a very diligent researcher, and this is also the difference of opinion between the black Maoist and then the white analyst. So that's, I guess, a bit of a grain of salt to keep in mind. But I think Brian Berletic is not some kind of woke white liberal kind of moron. You know, I think he's a very respectable analyst that does effective work that should not be treated as like he does journalistic work that should be acknowledged as opposed to dismissed for whatever culture war reasons kind of thing. So I don't know.
But I liked that guy. I liked what he was saying. It was spot on. It was like it was giving the vibes of like Charlie Kirk. Like nobody wants to see someone shot like that. But meh. I mean,
Yeah, but
if you're gonna be.
Antediluvian makes a good point. NED was defunded, sure, but the money is still flowing just with a new label. So I would say it's a bit dangerous to assume that they just defunded the USAID and everything, and now they don't do color revolutions anymore. The Trump administration, really? Yeah, like Victoria Nuland just kind of disappeared, right? She doesn't exist anymore. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, when's the last time a peaceful protest really got anything accomplished? It's just like a parade to make you feel good. Everybody goes home, and what happens? Whatever whatever they wanted to do, they still did it. So,
I mean, I think the other thing is that he was making that take like as everything was happening in the first few days. So, like just with the same with the Charlie Kirk thing, like everyone when we have yet to hear the upcoming information in the next few weeks, it's easy to speculate on something that would be theoretically a good understanding of what's occurring, but like over time or whatever, your analysis might be proved wrong just by watching as things unfold. And I feel like if you're gonna say that this Gen Z protest or protesting corruption of the government, you got to look at the interim leader now that they've chosen, this woman named Sushila Karki. So you're telling me they protest the corruption of the government and they elect a justice minister from the previous government. So how does that make any sense? Like a person who's participating in the government that you want to tear down is what you consider to be the acceptable. You know, it doesn't make sense.
oh, I thought. Wait, is that what I'm supposed to be showing? I thought it was a deep dive.
Yeah. Well, I would like to go into the Brian Berletic video, but for now,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just mentioning this woman, so I'm just quickly going to call this up. Where this is
Oh,
extremely
I
suspicious
see.
to me. If the protests are really being led by Gen Z youth people, um,
Then why aren't
why are they picking a chief justice of the Supreme Court for the leader that they want to eliminate corruption in the government that they're overthrowing? It does not pass the smell test. Okay.
That's like Trump draining the swamp, but then he brings the entire swamp with him in his cabinet. Like, where are these people have been in government
Yeah. Let's
for
not
a
be
long time, so why?
okay. So if you can call up the next video, then we can see what Brian Berletic has to say, and then I
Yeah.
can
Do
get
you
into
want
some
to
other
read that?
stuff. So, what's going on in the
Do you
chat
want to
there?
read that?
The whole point of a color revolution is that the problems are real, but the legit issues are co-opted. There would be nothing to work with if there were no issues. Exactly. So it's not to be diminishing. Like there's all kinds of people I'm sure that were genuinely, honestly fighting for change. I'm just trying to say that, like, to actually be on their side, we want to be acknowledging if the revolution that they were trying to achieve was been snatched from them and replaced with the opposite of what they're actually looking for. They would want to know that, wouldn't they?
What?
So Nepal is big site for us MLMs. India, Nepal, and Philippines. These are where the most revolutionary Maoist forces are. Personally, I see it more like a Bolivarian revolution, not a people's war, but there it is. And yes, I want to get talking and learning about these Maoist forces surrounding China, but not being supported by China. And that there's all kinds of contradictions worth analyzing there. And I think some valid, probably, critiques of China's choices here, kind of benefiting their people for sure at the expense of the broader people of the world. It does kind of call into question how Marxist-Leninist is the path that China has chosen, really, if they are considered it acceptable for them to abandon very revolutionary people just because they are not Chinese, right? I think that they have made a critical error in not supporting Nepalese Maoists, in not supporting Filipino Maoists and Indian Maoists, because it would have looked bad on the world stage. It would have been similar to what the USSR did, fighting the Cold War against the Americans. And a cynical viewer of all that going on would kind of say, well, China's no better than the US. They all engage in all this regime change for their own interests. So they're just hypocrites. But that's not really being fair to the actual struggle to overthrow capitalism. So that's kind of a whole tangent. Let's not get. You want to have anything to say before we play the video, Abby?
Yeah. What we got, babe?
Nepal is an Asian country between the borders of India and China in the Himalayan mountains. It has approximately 30 million people. And in less than a work week, in less than 5 days, we are told that a bunch of Gen Z kids just all suddenly woke up upset about the same thing on the same day, and they all decided to go out to the same places and burn everything down and run the government of a country of 30 million people out of power, again, in less than a work week. This is what we're being told. And people are asking me, was the United States behind this? And I concluded, yes, it was, because I've done extensive research. I'm going to share that research with you, all of the evidence, all of the different components of the protests, and who was behind all of them. But the first thing I want to address are people that criticize me. Every time I say the US is organizing unrest in a targeted country, I always get people that say, Brian, you're denying these people agency. They have grievances. They're really angry. They told me they're angry. And you're saying that they can't organize themselves? I'm not saying they can't organize themselves. I'm saying that no matter what a protest is about, and no matter who is behind it or what is behind it, you still require a number of things, including leadership, resources, logistics, communication, coordination, preparation. You need to have all of these things to successfully overthrow a government of a nation. Governments, already, just by the nature of being a government, are capable of coordinating across a wide spectrum of activities, from security to just maintaining the country and its infrastructure, reacting to disasters, healthcare crises. They have the ability to coordinate. So a protest movement that's able to out-coordinate and overwhelm them requires at least as much or more backing and coordination and preparation for the protests. A bunch of people don't just wake up on the same day, spontaneously organize themselves in less than 5 days and successfully overthrow a government. It doesn't happen. It is a fantasy. It is a bad Hollywood. It's not even just a Hollywood movie plot. It is a lazy and ridiculous Hollywood movie plot. And people will say, Brian, you're denying these people their agency. These people can organize protests in their own country. I agree, they can. I've seen it happen, and I've reported on it. There were protests in Thailand recently, and people were asking me, is the United States government behind those protests? And I said, no, they're not. I know who's behind them. I know who funds them. I know who's leading them. I know who's organizing it all and running the logistics, and they are not connected to the US government. They are opposed to it. In 2014, there were major protests in Thailand that looked very much like a US-sponsored color revolution. But at the time, I was reporting that, no, they're not. And I even compared them to the protests in Ukraine, which were also taking place at the time. And I showed how different the Western media's coverage of these two superficially similar protests. I showed how the Western media had two completely different takes on them. They very enthusiastically supported the protests in Ukraine. They ignored all of the violence carried out by the protesters. They focused and exaggerated all of the violence the police and the military responded with. And they were calling these protesters freedom fighters and pro-democracy. And they said the protesters in Thailand, these were undemocratic rabble. And the US government wrote a letter expressing concern over the quote-unquote undemocratic protests. And the Washington Post wrote an op-ed, The Post's View. Okay, this was 2014. Thailand's anti-democracy protests should provoke a harsh rebuke from the US. So they weren't just opposed to the protests. They were saying the US should take active measures against these protests in another country on the other side of the planet. And so they're talking about popular demonstrations against democracy. That's what they were calling it, because at the time, a US-backed client regime was in power in Thailand. These protests were trying to remove it. Now, I saw these protests. I observed them. I experienced them. I lived through them. And I can tell you that it wasn't just ordinary Thai people spontaneously organizing against the US-backed government. There were...
You're muted. Sorry.
He lived through them as in being in the country?
He lives in Thailand.
He lives in Thailand. Okay.
Yeah, that's another bit of small of a detail I meant to mention. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's also ex-U.S. Army, and I think he's ex-Army, expat, living in Thailand with an axe to grind for having served the wrong machine. So.
Okay.
Political parties, institutions, business.
Let me go back a little bit.
Country on the other side of the planet. And so they're talking about popular demonstrations against democracy. That's what they were calling it, because at the time, a US-backed client regime was in power in Thailand. These protests were trying to remove it. Now, I saw these protests. I observed them. I experienced them. I lived through them. And I can tell you that it wasn't just ordinary Thai people spontaneously organizing against the US-backed government. There were political parties, institutions, business interests, student groups. All of these groups got together, pooled their resources, coordinated. There was a leadership structure with a definite hierarchy. There was logistical support. And even though the Thai military won't admit it, they were almost certainly involved in all of this. They prepared extensively for it, and then they executed these, and it was a very protracted protest that eventually did lead to the ousting of the US-backed client regime. So I am not saying that that is not possible. What I am saying is, realistically, no matter what the protest is about, who is behind it, it still requires all of these components to be successful. It is just a matter of human nature and the physical realities of organizing large groups of people and getting them to do specific things required to overthrow an entire government. Let's get back to Nepal specifically. I hope I've dispelled that. I'm not saying that people cannot organize inside their own country large-scale protests. They can, but they still require leadership and funding. You can identify it, and you can rule out with confidence that it was not the US. You could see that not only was the US not connected to anyone involved in the protests in Thailand in 2014, the US
We might want to speed
openly
your
opposed it and
video up
actively sought to
if you
counter
want
it.
to. Not sure how much of this you want to watch, but you're muted there. Sorry.
Tosh Smith kept coming in here talking to me. Sorry. I'm finding it interesting. So,
Okay.
so his take is the uprising in Thailand was completely organic, with no interference from any government.
Or at
That's what
least
you
a
said,
lot more
right?
organic, more homegrown anyways. I'm sure if I go inspecting what he's talking about, the Thai revolution, whatever, there's probably some Thai bourgeoisie involved with all that. But I think what the distinction he's making is that it's not like for a foreign-led revolution.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main issue. Any revolution cannot be orchestrated by the neighboring or faraway countries. That's not a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
So you got some bad feedback again. I was just saying, because it's a long video, if you want to maybe get more into it, then we should just speed it up to like 1.25.
Oh, I thought you meant like move it forward, and I was like, no, it's getting
No,
good.
yeah, I don't want to skip
speed
anything.
it
I'm
up.
just saying,
Okay,
just for the sake of time, we might want to try
gotcha.
and hurry it up a bit.
Gotcha.
If it's too fast,
1.5.
anybody in the chat, if it's a little too fast and you can't keep up with what he's saying, just let us know. We'll put it back to normal.
Can I put the closed caption on? Would that help?
And I encourage people to watch the full video if in their own time, if they're interested. Even if they're not interested or whatever, just for your own informational awareness.
The chat is really funny. All right. I'm trying to focus on him and laugh. All right, here we go.
So what about Nepal? What do we know about these protests in Nepal?
Ooh,
We're being
that's
told by the
not
BBC this was from.
That's kind of fast. What did you think? That was kind of fast.
Well, that's 1.5.
Yeah. Let's try this.
Yeah.
So what about Nepal? What are we being told about it?
4 days ago, what we know about Nepal's anti-corruption protests as PM resigns. And so we have youth-led anti-corruption protesters. Youth-led anti-corruption protesters. And I just want to show people this. And I just wonder, the people who are acting confused or denying U.S. involvement, did they even check the U.S. National Endowment for Democracy's website? It is still up. This is their most recent disclosure. I've explained that they no longer disclose the name of organizations, but they still describe the programs they are funding. This is for Asia. You use Control F, you type in Nepal, you hit enter, and it brings you down to the programs that they're funding in Nepal. This is a series of programs they have already been funding in Nepal, spanning several years. Empowering youth, countering corruption. This is what they were funding in Nepal. And then a youth-led movement countering corruption erupts and overthrows the government in less than 5 days. And people are saying, did the NED fund this? I don't think that they did. I think the kids just did this on their own. This is what grown adults are saying right now. But it is this obvious and this blatant. That is what they did. They funded youth groups to counter corruption, and then a youth-led protest countering corruption erupted and overthrew the government in Nepal. Now, that is not the only evidence that I have. I will go through all of the different components of any of these color revolutions, the different components. There's always different components. There's the core leadership, There's the group that is organizing. It could be one organization. It could be a group of organizations. You have your fake human rights organizations that are going to sit there and create a pretext for the protests. And then they will also selectively report on the violence taking place during it. They will ignore all of the violence of the protesters, and they will exaggerate all of the violence from the police and military reacting to that violence. And the Western media will verbatim repeat that to international audiences. You have legal organizations that receive US government money to provide unlimited legal assistance to the agitators, the leadership of the protest, and people caught up in the protest. And this is to create a sense of impunity for the protesters. And you have media organizations that are attempting to amplify and spread, first of all, the motivation to get people out into the streets and to help escalate the protests as quickly and as widely as possible. So you have all of these components. I'm going to talk about absolutely all of them. And I started by showing you the general programs the NED is funding in Nepal, which are literally the demographics and focus of the protests that erupted. Okay, and there's others there also. There's strengthening government accountability and democratic processes through investigative journalism. There's also protecting Dalit rights. So they're always working inside of a country to pick ethnic or religious minorities and create tension between them and others. This is what the British Empire did when it colonized India and Nepal, Bangladesh, all of these countries in the subcontinent and into the Himalayas. And the British role in Nepal is going to come up here very quickly. So now let's go to the New York Times. The New York Times, I'm going to read a little bit from the New York Times. Nepal's social media ban backfires as political moves to a chat room. The parliament of Nepal right now is Discord. A user said of the platform popular with video gamers where tens of thousands are debating the nation's future. And so what we're expected to believe is that a bunch of kids spontaneously organized and overthrew their country. And now somehow they know how to use all of these online tools to organize a de facto interim government. That's what we're expected to believe, that they've done all of this on their own. It doesn't require any specialized knowledge or training. They know how to do this. I'm going to show you the specific US government programs that have spent millions of dollars spanning many years to train the opposition groups they are backing to do exactly this. So there is a precedent and there's evidence of US involvement in Nepal. So what does the New York Times say? It says, an attempt to ban social media in Nepal ended this week in violent protests with the prime minister ousted, the parliament in flames, and soldiers on the streets of the capital. Now the very technology the government tried to outlaw. And why were they trying to outlaw it? Because they realized the US was using it to divide and destroy and usurp their country. Is being harnessed to help select the country's next leader, as more than 100,000 citizens are meeting regularly in virtual chat rooms to debate the country's future. You tell me what percentage of 30 million people is 100,000, and if this is a legitimate process in any shape, form, or way. I would tell you it is not. Okay, I will tell you. It's less than 1%. It's less than half of 1%. Right here. What percent of 30 million is 100,000? 0.3 repeating percent. So usually we complain about the 1%, and now the 0.3% is running Nepal. Think about it. More than 30 people were killed in clashes with the police during youth-led protests that convulsed the capital. Outrage over wealth inequality, corruption, and plans to ban some social media platforms. Again, I will get into that. Social media platforms based in the US, repeatedly used, having documented evidence that they've worked with the US State Department to create youth-led mobs like this in other countries to overthrow governments. This was what the whole Arab Spring was. This is what was going on in Serbia in 2000. This is what happened in Ukraine in 2014. There is a single template, and they have reused it everywhere. And now they've used this identical template in Nepal. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that this template used in Nepal looks exactly like all of these others. I will get into the details of that. So Nepalis have taken to Discord, a platform popularized by video gamers, to enact the digital version of a national convention.
Commentary. I appreciate just sitting and letting it play, but I just feel because it's our stream, we should at least maybe take a moment to.
I'm so fascinated about what he said. Oh,
sorry, I muted you because you got this like snare drum sound in the background again. So
really,
it's like
right now, right now.
Yeah.
I can leave and come back, maybe. I don't hear anything. Okay.
I can hear. I don't know if the audience can let us know if they can hear that. I just thought it was interfering when we were letting the video play. Yeah, Sean's saying audio.
Tashmit is trying to force me to buy another mic. Maybe I'm gonna have to take her up on that. Yeah. An angry hiss. Okay. Let me see what I can do about that.
In the meantime, you could just make your comments and then mute when you're being silent.
So my comment. Okay, so I got this. What was his name? G GRB. Am I saying that right? I'm getting my alphabet. Whatever. Um, I hear what he's saying, and you would want to that to be true, right? But he's coming up with some receipts over here, so it, it's looking like it might be something that was orchestrated, but then you have to tie it in a bow and explain to me, well, what was their purpose for orchestrating that? Like, would what would we get out of it?
Yeah. Well,
I
I
don't
think
know enough about Nepal to know.
well, that's a good. I appreciate that comment there because I was thinking so far he's made a really good, um, he's made a good point about like, come on, don't be naive or whatever. But as of yet, he has yet to really provide the solid evidence that is enough to properly decide. You know, you can have a both sides kind of when you're initially learning about something, you need to listen to both sides, right? So to actually determine which side has a stronger argument. That both sides fallacy is when enough information comes out to determine one side is correct and one side is incorrect, and you continue to decide that we need to continue to give both sides equal consideration. That's the fallacy. There's also the one side fallacy, which is what's happening with China, I do believe, quite often when people try to discuss any kind of contradictions going on there, is there's a one sidism kind of happening. Only one side is correct, only one side could be correct. So we don't need to kind of analyze whether the other side might be correct about anything because we've already decided which side is correct and we don't need to get back into it. So there's this, that's what I'm just saying. Learning how to formally argue something is important. So
So hi Indy, by the way. I just want to.
hey,
You
Indy,
are in the right place. You are supposed to be sub to my channel. I don't know why he's not getting notifications though.
oh damn.
Because I mean we're not big enough to be like deplatformed. So that is a good question. But I'm going to leave for a second. Hi John, and come back and see if I can fix this audio issue that you guys are hearing. Okay.
Okay. Well, in the
Do-
meantime, we'll just have to wait for you to get back, because you're the one hosting the video. So
oh, that's true. What? Okay.
if you want,
Well,
you
go
can do
ahead and
that now, or you can do that later after we just let the video play for now, because we'll
yeah,
doesn't
and
matter
then
while letting
and
things
then
go.
when you start talking again, that's when I'll do it.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good.
These people know how to do that intuitively. And that whether they did or not, that process has any legitimacy at all. The channel's organizers are members of Hami Nepal. Who's Hami Nepal? We'll talk about Hami Nepal here in a moment. A civic organization. An organization means you have an office, you have staff, you have expenses, you require funding. Who's providing them that funding? And many of those participating in the chat are the so-called Gen Z activists who led this week's protests. So there's a core organization that organized and led the protests, and now they are overseeing the transition from the government they ousted to whatever it is they're installing into place. There's two takeaways here. All right, so again, they're claiming a bunch of kids, unemployed, angry kids, somehow know how to create a government on Discord. That is absurd. Okay, that's number one. Second, Hami Nepal, this is the organization they are admitting led the protests and are now organizing this transition online, using these online tools. And they did all of this in just less than a work week, less than 5 days. And so I will get into Hami Nepal in just a moment, but I want to talk about they're talking about this ban on social media. And I want to show you who created the initial backlash, who created the buzz, who was promoting this online, who was absolutely against it, and who was funding them to do that. So we'll start with CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists. CPJ, a Western organization funded by Western governments and Western corporate foundations, is saying to Nepal how to run their internal political affairs. And they're saying CPJ, Nepal lawmakers should reject social media bill, threatening press freedom. Look at the date here, February 14th, 2025. So this already goes beyond just 5 days, okay? You're being told this ridiculous Hollywood narrative to sell this to you. This goes all the way back months, maybe even longer. This CPJ statement telling Nepal on the other side of the planet how to run its internal political affairs, how to manage its information space, says the Nepalese government should withdraw a recently introduced social media bill that is expected to undermine press freedom, the Committee to Protect Journalists said. Nepal's proposed social media law is ripe for misuse against journalists reporting on critical topics of public interest. Wait until you see who funds CPJ. And the media, they're worried about being regulated, and obviously why. So this was the CPJ Asia Program Coordinator. Nepalese lawmakers should refuse to accept the proposed legislation unless it is significantly revised to protect the rights of freedom and expression and privacy. And what they mean, protect Western propagandists and people in Nepal taking Western money to spread Western propaganda. They need to be protected. They cannot be targeted and dealt with under this law. This is what they are saying. So who is funding CPJ? Very easy to search any of the CPJ's own website. Posts their annual reports. The most recent one I can find is 2023. The funding is the same over and over and over again. You use Control F. You see there's a huge number of organizations here, right? Let me show you what to do with this for lazy people that couldn't be bothered to do any research about what was going on in Nepal. You highlight all of these names, okay? You go to even a mainstream pro-Western AI tool like Gemini of Google, and you ask it, please organize. I'm always nice to AI, so when they take over the world, they'll spare me. Please organize this list into corporations, media interests, and foundations. Because that list, I mean, it's tiny, it's difficult to read, and you'd have to sit there all day looking at every single name, all right? And then you hit submit. And what it's going to do for me is organize this. And the list is very easy to now see. You have AT&T, Citi, these are all massive mainstream US, European corporations, banks, Forbes, JP Morgan, Merrill Lynch and Company. Here is Meta, Microsoft, Morgan Stanley, and the list goes on and on. That's how you sort it out. But I already asked it earlier, and I will show you.
Is this a good place to stop?
Yeah, that seems like a good moment for a comment.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna leave and come back. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's giving some compelling arguments here.
Yeah, but he used the AI. Dum dum dum. People easily knee-jerk response with, you used an AI, so I don't have to believe you because AI cannot be right about anything.
Yeah.
And this is where my little nuance.
Wait, I'll be back.
Yeah, sure.
I'll let you talk to everybody. Okay.
Okay. My nuance about the AI is we need to try not to be too reactionary and just declare that the AI cannot be trusted. What we need to do is try to have critical thinking and analyze on like a case-by-case basis. Is the AI correct about whatever the thing is that we're asking about? The same way with a human being, we need to be doing the critical exercise of, is what the person's saying true or not? The only way to do that is to go through the information being presented and to judge for yourself. So the AI is not necessarily incorrect. It's all about what the user puts in. If you put in the correct prompt, you can get a more correct answer. If you are a little bit imprecise in what you are asking, you will get an imprecise answer. And yes, there are some AIs are better than others. And yes, you should probably do your best to just not use it, because even if you do get useful information from it, just like buying stuff from the store, from a corporation, if it's food or if it's like a car or whatever, you get a benefit from it, but the people that you give money to, or by supporting their product, they get more out of it than you do. So we want to have our own control over our own means of production before we undermine ourselves by using corporate services. Yeah, trust but verify. Exactly, John.
Yes. And since is this better, by the way?
I think so.
Okay, I had to change something in the setting. So I caught the tail end of what you were saying. Oh, Sean says it's fixed. Perfect. So now I gotta remember to make sure that thing is checked every time. But anyway, Africa, I don't know what part of Africa, because Africa's huge. They came out with their own web browser. I think it's called AfriNet, and it automatically has like all these things in place that that like it's almost like you're going incognito when you're on it. You're not getting they're not like stealing your data and your clicks and every move that you make so they can use it against you later. So I don't know if anybody heard about that.
Also, I guess now is a good opportunity for me to reveal a little bit of disappointment in DeepSeek. This is where I'm trying to learn about Maoism, trying to learn about Mao Zedong thought, and I just asked it very, very innocently, what is Maoism? And it tells me that is currently beyond the scope of my ability or whatever to discuss. It's like, are you kidding me? So then China's banned DeepSeek from being allowed to talk about what Maoism is. So I have to go ask Google what Maoism is and learn from them. That's not good. That's not good, DeepSeek, China, whatever. What the hell? And I asked Mao Zedong, so what is Mao Zedong thought? And it says, it's currently beyond the scope of my investigation. And what it does, I've actually caught it a few times, it'll often start to give you an answer. And if you are quick enough to pause it in the middle of the answer, you can get the first part of what it's saying before it changes its mind and says, oops, you're trying to ask me a question I'm not allowed to get into right now. So I have caught that DeepSeek's not really, I mean, it's better in some ways than the Western ones, but it's got its own biases because of the people who program it. So
That's interesting. Like, okay, I'm at 18. What was he using? I can't remember. Right here.
Deeply disappointing, whatever, Sean.
Gemini. Right? Gemini.
I've never used Gemini, never used Grok. The only one I used was the Microsoft Copilot. Besides, like, everyone's talking about ChatGPT so great. Like, no, I don't think so. Depends on what you're asking, what it's allowed to tell you.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, DuckDuckGo. Yeah, DuckDuckGo is good too. So should I keep going when you finish with your?
Yeah, we can keep
whatever
going.
He was saying. Okay.
Just for to hear Cobra say that China views Maoism as terrorism, that's upsetting to me because they also still uphold Mao as like a revolutionary leader, but then they feel to put him in the proper context of their history and to not try and get into that too much or whatever. Like there's just, it's hypocritical, and I just think it's messy politics they've created about all that. There's no simple solution, I'm sure, but I don't think it's right for them. I think what they're doing is placating the West by describing these people as terrorists, when what they've done is kind of betray. Even if they're not as revolutionary, we can have criticisms about them failing to be Marxist-Leninist or whatever, but I don't think it's right to just say they're not revolutionary because China disagrees with them. Like, yeah, let's not get into that tangent too much because we got more focus on what to post about.
Hello, Barker.
Hey, what's up, OMB? And driving me Macy, good to see you.
Sort it out. I already asked it earlier, and I will show you some of the key results. I just went over some of them. It's funded by Open Society, which we know works adjacent to the National Endowment for Democracy, and the Ford Foundation, which for decades has been a source of laundering U.S. government funds to all of these examples of interference around the globe. Major U.S. media corporations like News Corporation, Fox News, Newsweek, New York Times, Washington Post, NBC, ABC, CNN, they're all on there. And they're worried that if nations start taking over their own information space and preventing the West from controlling the narrative inside their information space, they will lose control globally. We have to remember America's overarching geopolitical objective, under which everything else falls, is ensuring no rivals develop. This has been since the end of World War II. It continues to this very day. Corporate-funded think tanks and official government papers explaining the official position of the U.S. government all say the U.S. government is the sole global superpower, and it needs to maintain that position.
Don't we call that the rule of law?
Who else is funding C?
I said we call that the rule of law. And that's like code for what he just said.
Oh, okay.
CPJ, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Google and Meta specifically would lose influence and impunity inside Nepal's information space if this bill was passed. And if they were forced to register, they didn't want to register and comply, and then they would be banned. So there's an obvious conflict of interest with CPJ, its funding, and it demanding what Nepal does or doesn't do inside its own country regarding its information space. Goldman Sachs is funding them. Okay, these are not good guys. These are all of the corporate financier interests funding all of the think tanks, driving all of America's foreign and domestic policies that we all agree are destroying America domestically and ravaging the world globally. We all admit that. And so that's who's behind CPJ. It is a front. It's not a genuine advocate of journalistic freedom or human rights or anything else. It is a front that hides behind these values to advance US foreign policy objectives, including in Nepal. There's more. That's CPJ. That's them complaining about another country on the other side of the planet that's none of their business. Here is the Kathmandu Post. So this is Nepal. This is media inside Nepal. FNJ, other groups object to government's decision to ban social media platforms. So that was CPJ complaining back in February, don't pass the law, don't ban. Well, now Nepal's government is banning the social media platforms. Here's all the people complaining. An umbrella body and other 22 groups warn that a ban violates rights guaranteed by the Constitution. And they're basically just repeating what the CPJ said. Why are they repeating it? Because this is a universal truth they're both fighting for, or because they're all funded by the exact same interests. Other organizations that they list. So issuing a joint statement. So they're talking about FNJ, Federation of Nepali Journalists. They also talk about Digital Freedom, Coalition Freedom Forum, Nepal, Internet Society Nepal Chapter, Accountability Lab, Nepal, and Child Safe Net. What if I told you that almost every single one of those is funded by US government money? It is, and I'll show you. So here, go to the Federation of Nepali Journalists, About, and you scroll down, and they say they're members of IFEX. I mean, it itself admits that it itself is funded by Open Society and all of these corporations and foundations. It also says, Open Society Institute dominates the list of funders for IFEX members, of which that federation is a member. 5 years ago and now, the National Endowment for Democracy figuring prominently also. So Open Society, National Endowment for Democracy. This is a network they fund and they direct to take advantage of and hide behind values like journalistic freedom, free speech, human rights. They're hiding behind this to advance US foreign policy objectives around the world, including in Nepal. And the Federation of Nepali Journalists itself, they have all of these financial disclosures. They're extremely long and complicated and difficult to read. This one is 19 pages long. National, right here.
Okay, I feel like I get the point, but I'm like chomping at the bit as to why.
Yeah.
Like what do we get out of it that we weren't getting from the previous monarch?
Well, it's important to establish the objective facts about who's kind of funding it all, but that doesn't necessarily answer the why. And with the greater trade war with China and stuff, I think the US has interests in destabilizing and flipping to their side every country that they can that's around China for leverage in that trade war, right? So something I was going to get into, but I'll mention if I don't get around to it now. It's important to ask, how is Nepal being treated in this with the tariffs, with Trump doing global tariffs on everybody? Let's take a look at what is the tariff rate for Nepal. And while Trump has put like a baseline 10% on basically like every country, there are certain countries that he's targeted with higher tariffs, like 30%, and like India been targeted with 50%. That's why everyone's making this grand narrative about how India is being pushed into the arms of China, right? But then China's got a lesser tariff on it because it's negotiations with the US than India does. But Nepal has one of the lowest tariff rates in the world, and that makes it competitive in the American market, where there's things that their neighboring countries like India they're typically the major supplier for the US market, because without the tariffs, they're more competitive than Nepali products. But with the tariffs, lo and behold, Nepal has an edge on their neighbors. So that kind of stuff is circumstantial evidence. It doesn't exactly prove anything, but it does show that for whatever reason, the US has decided to do some favoritism for Nepal. And it seems like because they were playing ball behind the scenes. You don't have to slap us with a big tariff because we'll do a regime change for you. Just wait for it. It's coming. That's speculative, though.
Interesting. Okay, so the tariffs, and then just to piggyback off of what you said, like Trump was saying that he wanted to take back a military base in Afghanistan. He wants to take the base back because it's only an hour away from China.
Right.
So they're trying to do a snatch and grab of that base. So that's a really good point that you're making about the trying to, I guess, get allyship around any countries close to China and or that were in allyship with China.
I see Jacqueline's asking, is Trump targeting all the BRICS countries with the high tariffs? I don't actually have that information to solidly answer this question. I do believe that, well, Russia, they can't really tariff them. They've already sanctioned them to death over the last several years. So a tariff on them will mean nothing because none of their products are making it to the U.S. market anyways. I just mentioned India has a really high tariff on it because it's been not playing ball or whatever. Allegedly, apparently, it's not being compliant enough with the American demands. China's rate was massive. It was like 145%, but then they recently negotiated over the summer, I think in Switzerland or something, to bring that rate down to, I think it's 30% or 25% now. So it's lower than India's. South Africa and Brazil, I don't really have the figures off the top of my head here for you, but South Africa was being targeted earlier in the year for its stance on against the Israel, taking Israel to the International Court of Justice for the genocide thing. So I'm pretty sure they have a pretty high tariff. And Brazil just recently, news we didn't report on, they just put Bolsonaro in jail for like 28 years or something like that for doing a coup against their country. So they now have, with what's his name, Luis da Silva, is that his name? They're that party is more like pro-China and stuff. So I would imagine they probably have a high tariff too. We could just quickly look it up right now, and that would kind of put it to bed. So, but that's kind of getting on a different topic. So I'll answer that for you in the Discord later, Jacqueline, after the show. So
should I go ahead some? Does he even talk about any of that, or he's just laying all of the groundwork on how this is not as organic as you think?
I think towards the end, he shares another video from another content creator I'd never really heard of until recently. I forget who it is, but they have, like, the idea is that Nepal was looking to sort of take a page from China's book there and establish like the Chinese firewall in Nepal so that they could take, like, what he's been repeating in many of his videos is that it's important for nations to take control of their own information space so that they can avoid this kind of regime change and protect their sovereignty. So I think that's what his explanation for the why is that they were trying to protect their information space, and the US was not going to let that happen.
Interesting. Okay, should I just keep going from right here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
National Democratic Institute, NDI. This is a subsidiary of the National Endowment for Democracy. NED funds NDI, and then NDI funds the Federation of Nepali Journalists. They are taking U.S. government money. They are funded by U.S. government money. Right there. All of these links will be in the video description below. You can look at them yourself. The evidence is actually much more extensive. This is what I have time to show you. We're building a growing list now of verified U.S. government-funded fronts involved in setting the stage for these protests in Nepal, not local independent media funded by and for the people actually living in Nepal. Here is Freedom Forum. Freedom Forum was on that list in Kathmandu Post article complaining about the government's social media law. Who funds them? Their partners. The Enabling State Program, the UK Department of International Development. So the British government. They also list the British Embassy by name. Okay, so that's another one. The list is getting longer. What about Accountability Lab, Nepal? It is a branch of Accountability Lab itself. It is based in Washington, D.C. We have this higher government disclosure right here, headquarters, the Accountability Lab. This is their website. This is their headquarters, Washington, D.C., United States. Who's funding them? The Department of State. One after the other, after the other. They even have specific embassies, funding programs, and these are current. This isn't from 10, 20 years ago. This is current. And then we have Child Safe Net. They have a whole website, a whole web page regarding their partners. And it's this collection of US, European funded fronts, funded by the same handful of Open Society, National Endowment for Democracy, USAID, UKAID, Meta. They're all on there. So all of these organizations mentioned by Kathmandu Post, opposed to the government's social media bill and then the social media ban for companies that refuse to register and follow the laws of Nepal, they're all funded by the US government, by European governments, and by Western foundations, the same ones that we know for a fact organize regime change all around the globe. I will get into admissions from the Western media regarding that. Let's go to Hami Nepal, the organization, the BBC, the New York Times, everyone admits organized the protests and is now organizing the political transition in Nepal. You go to their website, a youth movement, and they've got the clenched fist, and this should be a warning. This should spur you to look deeper. This is all of the ideas, concepts, imagery the US has been using for decades now to target and overthrow governments all around the world. That is not a coincidence. That's in English. It's got the clenched fist from Serbia 2000 that they've recycled a million times since then. A youth movement, more than just an organization. All of these very nice sounding but completely meaningless slogans. You go down, this is their about page. I will, again, link it in the story. Championing the greater good and fighting for what's right. And they have 3 paragraphs of just absolute word salad. And all you get by reading it is that they get money from somewhere and then they use it to do good things. That's what it says on their website. And then you scroll down and they have brands that support us.
Oh, I paused it. I'm sorry. Look, that child safe one, I was just thinking, oh, children, you need to run. Run as fast as you can.
Yeah, they always go for the children, right? And it's definitely something we need to be picking up on. It's like what I'm reminded of with watching this is like once you see it, you can't unsee it. So when he's talking about like, that clenched fist thing, I've seen that image all over the place, but I didn't realize like that it's being recycled, like he's saying, by these.
Yeah, but he said I didn't understand what he meant by Serbia 2000. Was that the clenched fist has been around a long time ago?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think he just means specifically the way that it's being used in like
how they
like for posters and stuff. It's the same.
Oh yeah.
Like
they kind of like took it and rebranded it because I think the first time it really got popular and y'all can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong is in 1968 when gosh, I can't remember his name at the moment. But as a form of protest, I can't remember his name. He wore a black glove and held up his fist. I think he won.
Malcolm X or Martin Luther King.
No. This was in this was in the Olympics or. Come on, Rondo. I know you know. I could Google it and I'll come back to it.
He probably just mentions the Serbia 2000 as like the first instance that he recognized it for what it was or whatever, being from the CIA kind of thing. So, but I'm sure, like you're saying, if you go looking, it wouldn't be surprising to see it has a longer history than that.
Yes. Okay. So the Olympics in 1968. Let me just go back to.
And the other funny angle when we're talking about symbolism Oh, I was just gonna mention when we think
Oh,
about how the Freemasons are involved, they love their symbols and stuff, right? So they like to pull their black magic on the populace or whatever by using symbols to 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 give meaning to the people that the people themselves don't actually understand.
So it's I know it as a Black Power salute, and I mean that's like where I think it originated. But if somebody knows it from something
Well,
further
this is
out than that,
also
then let me
well,
know. But well, let me just finish the where it comes from. So
sorry.
it's okay. The two American athletes, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, they won. They won in track. I think the first and second place in the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City. So they were protesting like for civil rights in America. So and they got a lot of flack for that too, like a lot. Like like Colin Kaepernick fury for
Right.
that. So yeah. Anyway,
Well,
go ahead.
I just say a raised fist in general is like a bad example for identifying a symbol that's being used, because that's that's one that's like a little bit more universal and a little bit harder to pin to a specific kind of conspiratorial kind of meaning. But something like there's like the winking that, like I was mentioning about the Freemasons and all these celebrities and stuff, they all have these winkings that they're doing in photos, and they have like this OK symbol that they do. Like they have a circle
Oh,
that
that
they do
thing.
with their fingers, and they got three fingers raised.
It's,
I wish
yeah,
my camera was working right now. I can't really show you,
I'm
but yeah,
showing.
something. But just flip your hand the other way, right? And just
This
like
way,
that. Yeah, they do that all the time.
but they'll do it like
Variations of that, and it's like about it's like a yeah, as Sean's saying, like hand pyramids. They do all these little things with esoteric meanings, and so when you learn what they're doing with that, like it's not nothing, even though
and
it sounds like
just so
crazy.
you know, they do it this way too. Like if there's this lady who this lady it was at Congress. It was and she just had her hands folded and she was just like she claimed she was pinching her arm. And this was during the first Trump administration. They were doing that a lot and gaslighting us to say they weren't doing it for white power.
Yeah.
It started on 4chan as a joke to see how many people will fall for it, but I don't really believe it.
Well, I think the reason why they do it because it's an appeal to the irrational side of the human mind, right? We all have a kind of irrationalism to us, but certain, I guess, power structures really prefer to exploit the irrational side of people, and others, I would say, what I appreciate about Marxism and stuff like this, or dialectical materialism, it is the opposite of that. It is trying to reinforce and appeal to the rational side of the human mind and elevate that as opposed to manipulating people's irrationalism. So
Yes, exactly.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
that was amazing.
I
I
didn't.
heard that was too much. Definitely not a coincidence. On
Yeah,
September 11th, whatever, 22. What was he saying? It wasn't just 11 and 33. Someone, I think it was Dr. Nick Riviera or whatever, managed to find there was a 22 in there, like 22 hours. They caught him 33 hours after, but he was like 22 miles away or something like that. Like it was crazy.
I think it's called. What is it called? Germanics or something like that. I forget the
Gematria.
term. Gematria. Thank you.
Yeah, that's that. That's that Kabbalah, right? As far as worrying about Zionists controlling everything, then we look at how there's this Kabbalah esoteric gematria stuff where I feel
Gematria.
like
Yes.
there's too many coincidences lining up here, but we're getting on a
Yes.
tangent here now.
I know, and I just want to say, John H. Thank you taught me 4chan. It was on 4chan, not the old um, programming system. 4chan. My bad. Okay, so are we going back to?
Yeah,
Get back.
we got to talk
Let's
about
get
corporate
back
symbolism
to.
today. That's a whole nother thing, but yeah, let's get back to it.
Uh, to Glenn Greenwald, Timu, the Timu version. Ooh, I got my mic. Okay, there you go.
And don't make fun of him for being bald, guys. Come on. It's not. He can't help it. You think you look better with a wig?
I think he's handsome. He just, he's just.
He does look like
different.
Lex Luthor, though. That is fine.
And if
Anyway.
you hover over them, you can see that they'll link off to some company or organization. Okay, and some of them are like hotels. Some of them are this one, the Barbara Foundation. They allowed Hami Nepal to use their offices as a headquarters for some period of time. Coca-Cola is a U.S.-based corporation, and Coca-Cola funds a lot of the think tanks that are producing policy papers promoting war and regime change all around the globe. Now, I'm not saying Coca-Cola is funding or partnering Hami Nepal to carry out regime change in Nepal. I'm just saying this is an organization that claims that it stands for the best interests of people in Nepal. Everyone wants to say it's organic, independent, but it is connected to Western corporations involved in whatever capacity involved in war and regime change around the globe. They also have chambers. Ireland. This is the Chamber of Commerce in Ireland. And if you go to their website, some of these are major and extremely corrupt Western corporations, banks, contractors. Lilly is part of the U.S. European big pharma conglomeration. So that's one of their partners. They don't explain how they're associated with any of these groups. Have Viber, which the Western media says they were using to coordinate their protests. But a lot of this could just be some sort of innocent affiliation. Al Jazeera, maybe Al Jazeera featured them in an article. That's why they put them on their website. But what is Al Jazeera? Al Jazeera is basically Arab BBC. It is Qatari state-funded media, and it has supported every U.S. foreign policy objective around the globe without exception, except for the issue regarding Israel and Palestine. But that is how they maintain credibility in the region around the world. That is what gets people to watch Al Jazeera. And then they slip in all the other color revolution justifications for war, smearing and attacking nations opposed to Western primacy around the globe.
Oh, yeah, I'd say well said.
Media, hosting one of the largest military bases,
extremely important
in the region. And they just allowed Israel to kill a bunch of Hamas, not even militants or military commanders, but negotiators. And then they have, I'll get to this one in a moment. They have the Gurkha Welfare Trust. Gurkha Welfare Trust, what is that? Let me explain to you something about Nepal and British colonialism. They went into the whole subcontinent, they took everything over, they took all the different ethnic and religious groups and pitted them against each other, got everybody killing each other, and then they took advantage of all of these different groups and their different characteristics, and they exploited them to help build the British Empire. They took Gurkhas, who are a legendary group of warriors throughout history, and they incorporated them into their own units in the British Imperial Army. The British military today still recruits Gurkhas. Western military contractors still go to Nepal and recruit Gurkhas. If you go to their website, partners and affiliations, they don't just say who they're partnered with or affiliated with. They also explain the nature of the affiliation. So the British Ministry of Defense, the British Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, they have offices and facilities in Nepal. And this is basically the retirement program for these people they exploit to build Western empire around the globe today, still to this day, today. And then when they're done with them, they send them back to Nepal. That's another organization connected directly to the British government, the Foreign Office, and the military. And now we go to this one. Students for Free Tibet. You can see it down here in the corner. It pops up, the URL.
Oh, Tibet.
Students for Free Tibet. Free Tibet. Dalai Lama. Anyone who knows anything about Tibet and the Dalai Lama, they realize this is a CIA project going all the way back to the end of World War II. I'm going to show you evidence of that from the State Department itself.
He's
for Free Tibet.
He's really getting into it now.
Yeah, he's he says, I don't think we'll maybe get all the way to the end, but he says he felt compelled to bury them with evidence, right? And I feel like he's effectively done that with this video. So
yes. Okay, I remember when I used to say free Tibet, and then I learned a little more, and I was like, let me shut the fuck up. Okay, well let's let him talk.
Well, yeah, just on Tibet. As far as the
works in solidarity
I didn't
with the Tibetan people.
Sorry, just wanted to quickly add about the contradictions of Buddhism. When you look at the history, is the violence that the so-called pacifist Buddhist religion has been associated with. So that the whole history of Tibet is a good way to for people to kind of not have rose-colored glasses about Buddhism. But that's a totally different topic.
People in their struggle for freedom and independence. So it's not like we support Tibetan people inside of China. No, they're saying independence. This separatist organization is not based in Tibet. It's not even based in Nepal next to Tibet, although they do have activities in Nepal. It is based in the United States, in New York City. The NED's website, this is now deleted off of their website, but you can still access it through archived versions of the web page, Tibet 2019. And if you scroll down, you're going to find not one, but at least 2 grants for students for a free Tibet. Students for a free Tibet, twice. They're mentioned twice in this disclosure. You can see there's a lot. There's a lot of programs here listed. So Hami Nepal is partners with a US government-funded separatist organization, anti-China separatist organization. It is anti-China. It also advocates for a free Tibet. It's in the name, free Tibet. This should raise a flag. When you see this, it should immediately raise a flag. You don't accidentally, casually, coincidentally find yourself connected to any defunded organizations. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen by accident. Hami Nepal is admitting these are its affiliations, a British government and military-connected trust to manage the mercenaries they recruited from Nepal. Western corporations, Coca-Cola, pharmaceutical, oil, banking, and a US-funded anti-China separatist movement. It all raises serious concerns. This Free Tibet movement, we have to remember what this is and the implications of being connected to it in any shape, form, or way, associating with these people in any shape, form, or way is very serious, because this is part of a long-standing US foreign policy objective to not just advocate for Tibet independence, but to do it violently, to do it through sedition, treason, terrorism, and military force. And we have this from the Office of the Historian, from the State Department's official website, status report on Tibetan operations. This goes all the way back to it goes back even further than 1968. I mean, they even tell you 1951, 1956. And they're talking about political action, propaganda, paramilitary and intelligence operations. This is what the US government was doing then, and this is what they're still doing right now. You're a youth movement, and you're connected to all of these, it's just a coincidence that you're connected to all of these Western corporations and also a front funded by the US specifically to carve territory off of neighboring China, neighboring Tibet, inside of China. This is just what Hami Nepal is admitting to. We have to remember that there is no transparency here. There never has been. All the way back to 2000, when the US used this exact same template to overthrow the government in Serbia, it was all about funding it quietly, meeting with and directing these organizations quietly, secretly, often outside of the targeted country. We know this because the people involved in it admitted it. This is a New York Times article from 2000, who really brought down Milosevic. And I'm going to read to you from it, and I'm going to show you the template, and you can see how the movement in Nepal fits into it exactly. And there's no other explanation to how this protest was organized, funded, resourced, except as yet another US-engineered color revolution. So it says, for those Americans intent on bringing democracy to Serbia, the student movement offered several attractions. So talking about student, youth-led movements. Its flat organization would frustrate the regime's attempts to pick a target to hit or compromise. In other words, it's very hard to figure out who's leading it. It's the whole point of using youth, student-led movements. It's very hard to figure out who is in charge. By flat, they're talking about it's flat, it's decentralized. This is by design. This isn't a coincidence. It is by design. And so McCarthy says from August 1999, the dollar started to flow to Oktar pretty significantly. Of the almost 3 million spent by his group in Serbia, he's talking about the National Endowment for Democracy. Since September 1998, he says Oktar was certainly the largest recipient. And of course, they're funding all of these other groups. And none of them are disclosing it. So the only way you would know is by understanding what the template looks like and identifying the groups within that template. That is how you spot a color revolution. They will make mistakes. You will see it, like Hami Nepal listing an NED-funded separatist organization based in the US, funded by the US government on its website as a partner. That is a mistake, a slip up. That's how you know they were one of the organizations involved. They did not do this on their own. The money went into Optar accounts outside of Serbia. So again, they're taking
as
specific
far as
measures to
you wanna
conceal their
posit
involvement.
Why would they make that slip up? I feel like the only reasonable explanation is that they are trying to do their due diligence, legally speaking, that there's an obligation to disclose donors and whatnot. And if you don't do that properly, you get flagged as an organization with suspicious activity. So they are trying to do their best to not kind of screw themselves up legally, even though they control the legal structures and stuff. They just don't want to. So I think it to them, whatever the lesser of two evil choices, I guess, is to list the funding on their website that they hope and expect most people won't ever see or catch on to.
They do sometimes get sloppy, you know. Like,
Yeah.
but I see what you're saying, and they're hoping nobody's gonna go, or nobody like him is gonna go and look for it, and pay that close of attention.
Yeah.
But sometimes they get sloppy, and like they got sloppy with that Charlie Kirk thing too.
Oh yeah.
Like
Well,
that's real sloppy.
Because the other explanation is that there's just out of arrogance that they're wanting to flaunt it. They want to kind of spit in our eye a little bit by saying, "Hey, look, we're going to do a color revolution, and we're going to tell you to your face who's doing it and why and everything, and you're just not going to be able to stop us." Ha ha ha! I find that a little bit less believable.
Israel is pretty sloppy too.
Yeah, and they do exactly that too, right? They like to taunt people and be like, "You can't stop us, whatever." So why will we hide anything? That's exactly how they're acting.
Whew. Boy, the chat.
Yeah, there's a whole bit of a snafu thing. I don't really want to get into that tonight.
Nope.
Petty
Look,
shit.
when we started doing what we were doing, we thought we were just going to be nerding out on politics. We didn't know it was a whole another element, a whole different type of social element involved amongst podcasters.
Pretty hard to be on YouTube
Very interesting.
without getting pulled into that YouTuber drama. I hope that not to be getting into that, but I guess, you know, not to be naive, whatever. To imagine that we would be the lone exception to that is a bit silly.
It's a bit silly. Yeah. Well, I was naive, to be honest. I didn't even think, you know. I mean, that was very naive of me. But I also thought we were going to be on the same channel for the whole time, so I wasn't thinking anything of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's
but
a
anyway,
lot of things that have gone a different direction than I had hoped that they would go, and I would hope that there are bigger things more important for us to be fighting about. Let's do that instead of picking fights over things that, in the grand scheme of things, don't really matter.
So are we finished with him? I know you have some other
I gotta kind of move on. We can keep beating it to death with that, but I think for this purpose of saving some time, we can just recommend people to go. We could drop the link in the chat, and people can follow up the rest of the video in their own time. I got some other things to kind of put the nails in the coffin from my perspective, so maybe I should start sharing some of those links.
Yep, start sharing that. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to show this map. I hope it's big enough. I hope that doesn't look very big, does it? I just wanted people to see Nepal. I don't know if you can see my pointer. Nepal is. Can you see my point? Oh, shucks. What happened? What happened? Okay, can I move this? Move? Go back. Okay, so everybody sees China, obviously. Between China and India, there's this little strip, and it's hot pink. That's Nepal. And then, of course, right above India in light purple, that's Pakistan. And then right above that in orange is Afghanistan. So you see how close China is to Afghanistan, and that military base is only an hour away from China. So that's just going back to what we were saying about what would the United States have, what would their interest be? I don't know if it would be in like resources, minerals.
Yeah, there's probably some rare earth minerals in the mountains. I would not be surprised at all. But
Right.
that's another thing to mention about Nepal is the elevation, right? The one thing that like it seems, if you just look at the map, you see how they're right next to China, but
Mm-hmm.
historically, the difficulty of accessing China because of the mountain range that divides the countries makes it so that naturally they've always had a bit more of a gravitation towards India. The rivers flow southwards and everything, so all their trade and cultural ties are much stronger with India because of natural geographical barriers. So, but that being said, now we live in the modern world with all our ability to travel places that we couldn't way faster than ever before. So things are changing, and that kind of scares a lot of people. So,
Yeah, like this might be besides the point, but I'm just rambling so you can pull up your stuff, right? Um, so because they're so mountainous, like that's why we really couldn't win in Afghanistan. I don't know why America thinks they can go. Like the terrain is crazy. Like people could just hide around the mountains in the mountains. That's why we couldn't win in Vietnam because they weren't ready for the geography, the lay of the land like that. Like they were getting their asses handed to them because we're not used to stuff like that. Uh, um, I wonder, and you said Nepal is mountainous also, so good luck.
yeah, but we
But
gotta go look at
controls.
see which regions have access to. Like, you can just assume that they have the rare earth minerals, but you actually have to go look to see how much do they actually have, how much do they potentially have, depending on unexplored um, excavation sites and stuff like that. So
That's true because they might have minerals that they don't even know about yet. Um,
yeah.
but I'm going to look it up really quickly, and we can come back to it.
So this I'm not really exactly sure where to start, but I was mentioning this Sushila Karki is the interim leader that they are saying that people have elected, which is a bit of a joke. But this other character I think is important to, as far as the pro monarchy kind of side. We should get into who some of these people are. So, former Chief Justice Sushila Karki and businessman Durga Prasad enter Nepal Army headquarters amid political unrest. To me, this is suspicious. So, former Chief Justice Sushila Karki and controversial businessman Durga Prasad have entered the Nepal Army headquarters in Kathmandu Thursday. They were allowed entry with military security, while others were denied access. The protesters, organized by the Gen Z groups, turned violent Monday, leading to the collapse of the executive, legislative, and judiciary branches. Key leaders, including the president and prime minister, have been placed under army protection, and the army has assumed command of the country. After the Gen Z groups recommended Karki to lead an interim government, the army brought her to the headquarters for discussions. So, for a revolution that apparently succeeded, I don't see them having actually defeated the army like they did back in the day with the Maoist revolution that took them like a decade and cost like 17,000 lives. This one, apparently, they just managed to get the army on their side after 5 days. It doesn't make any sense. And the army was not defeated, right? The army has defeated them and is doing this whatever
Point
media.
0.33% of the
Yeah.
population, by the way.
So this Durga Prasad, who is that now? It's kind of interesting. Let's just quickly switch over to the Wikipedia, which I know is despicable, but even what the Wikipedia says in the first couple paragraphs is disturbing. So Durga Prasad is a Nepalese right-wing political activist, medical entrepreneur, so capitalist, and former Maoist guerrilla. What the fuck? Okay, that's a very when you look into the history of mercenaries in the world and everything, you got a lot of revolutions are opportunities for opportunists, right? So someone who's doesn't really have any allegiances. They're just as willing to pretend to be revolutionaries as people who actually join it for ideological reasons. So that's something that every movement has to be wary of, is how many people are in this just for the money or whatever, or for the violence, you know. So since 2023, he has been frequently active in a political movement, leading social and political campaigns in all state provinces of Nepal against the current federal democratic government system, and calls for its overthrow to reinstate the constitutional monarchy and Hindu state by amending the Constitution of 2015. So this is where the other thing we haven't mentioned is India's Hindutva fascist problem and their, I think it was called Akhand Bharat, their dream of a greater India. So what kind of a politician in Nepal would maybe be the kind of person that they want to go to help them realize their dreams of Akhand Bharat, which should be condemned and not celebrated, much like we condemn the Greater Israel Project, okay? Because it's just that Liebesraum fascist expansionism that should be denounced as that and not made excuses for, like Dugin wants to do, like we showed the other day.
Yeah, class is in session. Chatterbox. Y'all remember that from last week, huh?
So it says
Greater India and Greater
Israel. And so there's all kinds of greater.
It was
Greater Turkey too.
Greater Turkey and Greater. The guy was from, where was he from? He was talking to one was Greater India, and then the other one was Greater. Was it Turkey?
Yeah, that was Alexander Dugin. Well, that's. We were just watching a little interview. I think it was like an Indian, like it was Sputnik, which is like that Russian, similar to RT.
Oh yes.
So he was just one of the Indian broadcasters that works for Sputnik in India, right? And he was interviewing Alexander Dugin. It's the kind of stuff that the state is basically state media funded propaganda, you would say, right?
But Alexander Dugin is from
Russia.
Russia, so it's Greater Russia, Greater India.
So yes, Greater Russia, they have that Novosibirsk, okay? The whole thing happening in Ukraine, if you're not having a sympathetic viewpoint towards it, you can maybe try and see, if you're looking for the history of fascism in Russia, and they maybe have a similar kind of let's make Russia great again kind of thing. And some people interpret the situation in Ukraine as that happening. I'm not entirely sure, but I think there's a little bit of an uncomfortable. There's too much red-brown stuff happening for me to be comfortable with it. You know, I understand the whole we have to push back against NATO and stuff, but there's some history that we need to be aware of. That, like I myself have not done the research about Russian fascism, but I know that there is a history there to research, and I have kind of learned as of last week that people like Dugin are maybe the modern faces of that. So, but there's too much that I don't know to be able to speak on that authoritatively.
Jacqueline. I have the minerals whenever you want, whenever you're ready.
Sure. I was just going to say,
Yep.
So it says he was previously charged for loan default worth, I think that's the Nepalese rupee 5.57 billion, lent by 8 different commercial banks of Nepal to establish the medical college B&C hospital in Japa, which is why he's a controversial medical entrepreneur, because he stole the money to be the bourgeois that he is, right? So, and it's interesting that after this revolution that he's being summoned by the army to help facilitate the transition of power, when he should probably be arrested for all that money he stole. I don't know. That's just my thought on that. I don't really know anything about all of this stuff. It's just what I found briefly, and I didn't have time to go looking into this. So it says government agrees to grant affiliation to B&C Medical College. That's probably the corruption that they're complaining about, that they want to overthrow, right? We don't want a government that, instead of prosecuting somebody, grants them their affiliation right? So that's just a kind of red flag, whatever. Not to spend too much time on that. There's also this, just a few little circumstantial evidences piling up. So the Hindu king's portrait behind Nepal army chief. Is there a message? This article is from 6 days ago, but you can see in the photo there is, I guess that's the old, like the person who started the dynasty of that monarchy. They have a picture of that original monarch. It's not the one that was overthrown or whatever, but it says Nepal Army Chief Ashok Raj Sigdel's address to the nation on Tuesday evening carried the usual appeals for peace and order, but what grabbed the attention of many was an image displayed behind him, the image of former Hindu king Prithvi Narayan Shah, the mid-18th century monarch who laid the foundations of modern Nepal through his campaigns of territorial unification, set social media abuzz. Did the portrait hold a specific message, some significance? I would say most likely. It's a dog whistle. Reactions poured in instantly. It's also a cult of personality. Okay. So as far as people saying, well, maybe we can, cult of personality is okay for us to use, right? There's nothing right wing about it or nothing. It's extremely bad bad for the psychology of the nation. We should never encourage cults of personality. That's like great man theory of history stuff. That is not class consciousness. Okay. We don't need to put all of our hopes and dreams and faith in a single individual. What we need to do is strengthen the idea that it is the people who make the change, not the individuals, right? It's our collective working class working together that makes the change in history. It's not these single people with fancy royal blood that make things happen. Okay. So it says reactions poured in instantly. Some called the presence of Prithvi Narayan Shah's portrait behind General Sigdal a huge development, others the biggest optic signal, while one observer described it as a big statement. And then I'm sure there's people who also said it doesn't mean anything, where you can choose to who you want to believe, right? So Nepal, for most of its modern history, was a monarchy ruled by the Shah dynasty. In fact, it was the last Hindu kingdom before the Maoist rebellion dethroned King Gyanendra Shah, the present head of the Shah dynasty, in 2008. The country, which has cycled through 13 governments in 17 years, what does that sound like? Israel? Go fuck with that democracy, right? That witnessed fresh pro-monarchy protests earlier this year and has been abuzz with talk of a royal comeback amid frustration over corruption and nepotism. So, not to read that whole thing, but it mentions here that there was fresh pro-monarchy protests earlier in the year. So let me find that tab here briefly. Pardon me. If you got a comment while
I could tell them about the resources while you're looking. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So it looks as if, oh, let's see it. Let's see. Where this tab instead. Let's see if I can just rattle it off to you though. So there's a nice picture of Nepal.
It's not showing anything.
It just okay. So it's like you said, it's extremely mountainous, and I picked this one because it has the picture of Nepal. And so they have a lot of untapped natural resources. They do a lot of importing, but their resources, they have gold, limestone, mica, iron ore, copper, and some other stuff. And it hasn't been mined mostly because of the terrain, and I guess they're not having the ability to do it. Agriculturally, there are a lot of trees, so there's a lot of what are they saying? Paper, timber, and furniture that comes out of there because of the forest cover. Oh, I skipped agriculture. I'm sorry. The agriculture isn't really a big deal because that's mostly for them because they import most of their stuff. Then water. This is the big one. So they haven't really harnessed
Yeah, the
their
water wars are coming. Don't
high.
forget.
Say again.
The water wars are coming. Everybody should remember.
That's true. But in terms of their water, it's more about hydroelectricity. And it says, okay, the maximum potential for production of hydroelectricity has not been met. Estimates place the country's potential for electricity production at a whopping 83,000 megawatts. The country currently can only produce a measly 600 megawatts. So that's a lot of untapped potential. Because when I saw water, I was like, "Oh shit, we're coming for their water. Aquifers be damned."
Right, and when you think about their neighbors to the south, Pakistan and India are both they're approaching the limits of their ability to sustain themselves with their own domestic water. They are reliant on looking abroad to fulfill their growing needs because their populations are growing in such a way that they're going to run out. They're already kind of having a hard time providing enough water. So that's where I think India in particular has a very vested interest in determining a friendly government in power in Nepal.
Interesting. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Here.
No problem. I could show this too. Just this has no bearing on what we were talking about, but I just wanted to show this powerful picture. I don't know if you can see it. Because you don't have anything brought up yet.
Now that you show that image, I have seen that. That now I know what you're talking.
Okay. Yes, exactly.
Icon.
So anyway, you don't have an icon. Mostly people remember John Carlos, but they don't remember the other person's name as much. He doesn't really talk about it much. There's an infamous statue too of all three of these guys. Well, they won first and third place, my bad. And supposedly the guy in the front, he was pretty cool about the whole thing. But anyway, you don't have anything. Oh, you have it up now. Okay, yeah. So let me get out of your way. There you go.
So because nobody's had any reason to pay attention to Nepal 6 months ago, we didn't really hear this story. But it's important to realize that this didn't happen in just 5 days, right? So violent protests for monarchy rocked Nepal. 2 killed, 105 arrested, including party leaders. Curfew partially lifted in Kathmandu amid unrest. 2 people were killed in violent protests demanding the restoration of the monarchy in Nepal on Friday. The police have arrested 105 individuals on charges of inciting violence, damaging private property, and arson. This is like, if we want a comparison in the West, we have protesters on the left and the right? So remember that Charlottesville stuff? There was all this right-wing nastiness. Well, just because you're out there on the streets protesting doesn't mean you're actually protesting about anything that the people want to support. You might be an extremely small and irrelevant, not irrelevant, whatever, but toxic minority that people don't trust. The majority of people don't actually trust. So among those arrested are Rabindra. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, this is when you were like, there's protesters on the left and protesters on the right. And
you're hearing that song. I forget.
Stuck in the middle with you. I'm just being goofy. Go ahead.
That's a nice little comedy break for you. So it said, among those arrested are Rabindra Mishra, vice president of the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party. I'll get to that in a minute. And General Secretary Dawal Shamsur Rana. Additionally, 17 other pro-monarchy leaders and activists, including Swagat Nepal, Shepherd Limbu, and Santosh Tamang, I have no idea, have also been taken into custody. According to Home Ministry sources, the main organizer of the protest, Navraj Subedi, has been placed under house arrest, while security forces are actively searching for Durga Prasad, the guy I was talking about earlier, that's been invited to facilitate the exchange of power to the new government, the chief commander of the movement. So the protests involving more than 40 Nepali organizations turned violent in Tinkun, Kathmandu, where demonstrators vandalized a building and set it on fire. Protesters also hurled stones at police, prompting security forces to respond with tear gas to control the situation. So, and as far as all the right-wing pro-police people in the U.S. or whatever, where's your support for foreign police, right? You know what I'm saying? And the rule of law, right? Oh, we got to respect the rule of law, except for when it's in another country being overthrown, in which case, fuck that.
That is the rule of law of throw countries.
Yeah. So that's just that old bit of news. Not to hang up too much on that. Maybe I'll go to this tab now. Bear with me while it loads. Here we go. So can you guys see that?
There you go.
Why Nepalese think Modi is supporting the movement to restore the monarchy. So despite New Delhi handing over a prominent monarchist to Kathmandu, many Nepalis suspect Hindutva groups in India are covertly supporting the former king. And I think that they are perfectly intelligent and reasonable people to have those suspicions. This is from April 29th, 2025.
You call me again?
When there was a king in this country, the world treated us with respect, Kusbu Ali said. Now even the Prime Minister of India does not invite the Prime Minister of Nepal because the Indians do not trust him. Which is funny because I have another thing, an article that says the Nepali Army Chief, Sigdel, was conferred an honorary rank of General of Indian Army. So whatever guy is claiming that their prime ministers are not inviting each other, that's got everything to do with the pro-China stance of the people who just got ousted from power. And that would be, I would, in my opinion, that was a positive development to have Nepal trying to get closer to China than with India for the balance of power kind of thing. So, but the whole thing about their generals conferring each other honorary things, that's a legacy of the British colonial, where the British were the ones who started that practice, and they carry it on because it reinforces their Hindutva kind of allegiances, and it prevents Nepal from being able, like, Nepal doesn't have that kind of relationship with Chinese generals. So that's a nice little thing to kind of observe, right? So Ali is a central committee member of the Rastriya Prajatantra Party, which is leading the campaign to reinstate the last king of Nepal, who was deposed in 2008. The party also wants to make the country a Hindu Rashtra. The campaign drew attention in India after posters of Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Adityanath were spotted at a pro-monarchy rally in Kathmandu on March 9th. Later, Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli promised to expose New Delhi's role in supporting the movement. So the Prime Minister that got ousted is actively saying that he's going to expose how India is trying to overthrow him and establish this Hindu Rashtra and bring back the monarchy and stuff. And lo and behold, like whatever, a few months later, the guy's not in power anymore. So don't underestimate the power of the bourgeoisie or whatever. They got all the money and the connections with all the other people who have all the money. Even if they're in a tiny minority, they have more power than all the majority of us. So let's have respect for that if we're wanting to actually change the state of things properly. So his
Money
sensation,
can buy you anything.
yeah, buy the allegiances of the people that are telling you to your face that they're your ally, but they've sold out, right? And you can't tell unless you're paying attention. So pay attention. His sensational charge echoed recent allegations about India interfering in the domestic politics of other neighboring countries, such as Maldives and Bangladesh. The other thing that if you're like doubting the possibility of a color revolution is what just happened in Bangladesh. I forget how long ago, less than a year ago, I'm pretty sure. The exact same kind of thing that happened here, a youth-led, whatever, protesting corruption. They overthrew their government, and then what did they accomplish or whatever? I don't think they've actually fixed any of that corruption. I feel like they just made it worse, but that's something I'm going to have to do another deep dive on some other day. So like, share, and subscribe if that's what you want to see. Scroll.
I like how you did that there.
Yeah.
Well, how they do that now?
We're learning a little bit. We're growing. Scroll spoke to politicians and civil society members in both Nepal and India to understand the factors fueling this mistrust of New Delhi as a section of Nepalese clamor for the return of their king. Suspecting an Indian hand, the similarity between the talking points pushed by the Nepalese pro-monarchy campaign and Indian Hindutva groups is difficult to miss. The monarchists in Nepal, like many Hindutva supporters in India, complain about cow slaughter and question the activities of Christian missionaries. Kusbu Ali, however, dismissed the idea that these ideological similarities mean monarchists in Nepal have any organizational links with Indian Hindutva groups. Of course, we must maintain that plausible deniability. You guys are paranoid. You don't know what you're talking about. How dare you cast these aspersions? Fuck you people or whatever trying to say that we don't know what we're talking about. Like, there's been a very well-established history of these people being bad actors doing bad things. Let's not be naive. So, though she admitted that many in her party appreciate Adityanath for his brand of Hindutva, she claimed that his posters at the pro-monarchy rally were brought in by an infiltrator. The Prime Minister's Communist Party of Nepal was pulling out all stops to discredit their movement, she alleged. Except that this is like the way that the politics works, right? So if you're actually trying to bring down the government, then your movement should be discredited because it's not a credible movement. So maybe I should, let's see where to go here.
Wait, you said if you're trying to bring down the government, it's not a credible movement?
I'm saying if these monarchists are trying to bring down the government, the Communist Party of Nepal has every right to discredit their movement because it's not credible. That's what I mean. Like,
Look,
that's the kind of thing it's important for you to clarify, right?
Yeah, I was like, wait, who took Michael?
No, I'm still here.
MK Ultra? What's going on here?
But if I ever start saying whatever these suspicious things, whatever, don't trust me, right? So.
And look, this makes it. I just want to bring this up real quick. Okay, the original song is clowns to the left of me and jokers to the right, and I'm stuck in the middle with you. And Rondo says, what's funny is that I heard in some podcast recently that more disparaging term for CIA agents is the clown. So if that's true, then that was even more hilarious.
So I'm trying to figure out where I want to go here with next. Maybe I'll go with this tab here. Since we've already kind of brought up this Durga Prasad guy, maybe I'll kind of stick with him and try and establish who he is a little bit clearly. I think we've pointed out that he's the commander of the pro-monarchist movement, right? And he's corrupt, like, oligarch who should be in prison, right? But he was also the Maoist guerrilla back in the day. So, like, what the hell is that about, right? So Durga Prasad became the commander of the royalist movement by overriding the former Panchas. This is where some of the words I don't really know because there's just too much to learn. I don't have, in order to try and focus on the important things, I'm going to have to learn about, like, what does the word Pancha mean on another time, if I ever do. So dismissing the old Panchas, the businessman, Durga Prasad got the leadership of the royalist movement. The Joint People's Movement Committee, led by former Pancha Navraj Subedi and the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party, Prasad, which has been doing politics to bring back the monarchy, have joined the movement called by him. Led by Prasad, a Joint People's Movement Committee was formed on Chait 4 under the leadership of RPP leader Navraj Subedi the former president of Rashtriya Panchayat. I'm not sure if I have time to talk about this guy either, but he's also worth knowing about. And the surname Subedi, something we haven't mentioned yet, is the caste system in India is not just in India, it's in a lot of these countries, right? So they have their own version of the caste system in Nepal, and the Subedis are Brahmins, which is the highest caste. So there's that class, the classism of the caste system is a big part of the problems that Nepal and India and all these countries in this, where with this ethnicity, with these ethnic backgrounds or whatever, that's something to factor into your analysis. Is okay, which side is the Brahmins on? Oh, they're the bourgeois, conservative, pro-monarchists, whatever. Okay, now I get it. Right, and which side are the untouchables on? You know, the poor, like lumpen proletariat. Oh, okay, they're with the Maoists. Oh, I get it. Right, so that kind of brings some clarity.
What did you mean by bull, Sean? There's a question on the floor, and I just want to get clarification.
Sorry, what's that?
There was a question on the floor. I just want to get clarification.
Brahmin like the bulls? This question?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Brahmins are they're like the wealthy upper crust class of India and a lot of these like Nepal and stuff, right? They're the ruling class is the Brahmin class. They've been for like thousands of years. They've considered themselves. They're basically like the original architects of eugenics. Okay, the caste system is deeply disturbing and should never be supported by anyone. There's a certain group of people who benefit the most by advocating for something like a caste system, and that's the people at the top. The people at the bottom of a caste system don't actually want the caste system. They want it abolished. But who wants it to stay? The people in control of the rest of the people. So naturally, you got to kind of pay attention to what people's biases are. Okay, I don't trust the bias of a Brahmin because they see themselves as better than the rest of us, which is not okay. You know, like they look at they have a caste of people they call the untouchables. They've created rules where you're not allowed to touch them. You're not allowed to make babies with them, or you're not a Brahmin anymore. That's not healthy psychology to teach your society. So those people should be not listened to. They should be disenfranchised from power. But they are the ones historically who have had all the power. So when you're looking at what needs to change for, you know, progressive Marxist politics, one of the things that needs to be abolished is the caste system.
Yeah,
that's something that's going to piss people off. Like I'm trying to maybe build some inroads with some Canadian Indians and stuff. Well, if I'm going to offend somebody because they are Brahmin and I'm against that, I'm sorry. That's a stance that I'm not going to be able to change. But I'm not that.
They're usually, I'm just answering Jacqueline's question. You kind of answered it for her, but they're usually the lighter skin. Oh, Lance said it too.
Yeah, who can afford to move, right? That's always
lighter
the thing.
skin of the groups.
But it's not
They're
always
higher,
the case.
yes.
Like we also have to remember there is such a thing as that those people who like are the poor and less educated and stuff, they manage to scrape a few dollars together and leave to find a better life somewhere else, right? That does happen
Right.
too.
That
So we
does
gotta
happen
not
too.
judge people until we get to know them.
Well, usually the ones that's true. That does happen too. But they're usually they migrate.
Far less likely.
People in the caste system, they usually migrate to those places and somehow find their way in government or in very high places in every very high financial jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah, one day we got to look at the those Indians that were placed into the Trump administration. If every single one of them is a Brahmin, does that tell you something? I think so.
Like Vivek Ramaswamy.
Right, and if they're not technically Brahmin, doesn't mean that they're not. That doesn't like validate them as a good person, or just like people from any caste, whatever walk of life, can be corrupted and be class traders and stuff, right? So everything is complicated. I'm sorry. That's just the way life is. So you want me to get back to this a little bit? We're getting to be 2.5 hours in, so we're going to see if I can make this wrap this up in a half hour or so. So the committee was drawn into controversy with its formation. The RPP chairman Rajendra Lingden stated that he is not in the said committee. Not really sure what we're talking about. The Joint People's Movement Committee, I guess. The meeting of the Performance Committee of the RPPA decided not to lead the party under the leadership of a special person who would protest. Even before the Subedi-led committee was formed, Prasai had announced that he would demonstrate in Kathmandu on March 15th. Subedi, who tried to become a common leader of the royalists, not only took ownership of the movement, announced by Prasai alone, but also declared Prasai as the commander of the Jan Andolan Committee. Jan Andolan is the name for their revolution that they had. There was 2 of them. I forget. I think this first one was in like 1990, and then the second Andolan was in like 2006 or something. I forget. But in a statement issued by Subedi, it is said the committee has adopted the movement that was announced to start from Chait 15th. This is their calendar, which is interesting, by the way. They have their unique calendar. The year is like 2085 or something in Nepal. So before the formation of the People's Movement Committee, he said that from 17th of Chaitra, more protest programs will be announced on behalf of the committee. I don't know if this is really all that relevant to be reading. I'm sorry about sharing this particular. I maybe had more.
Yeah, that's getting in the weeds.
Yeah, because what the point of this is, he became the commander of the royalist movement by overriding the former Panchas. So like the struggle for leadership with the all the political parties that have been in power since the abolition of the monarchy, that's kind of how he rose to the top of the royalist movement after fighting to depose that. You know, like it's a kind of an important story about like what happened to the bourgeoisie when the Maoists successfully fought their insurgency. I think the uncomfortable truth is that when they realized the monarchy was not viable anymore for them to put their backing behind it so they can safeguard all their wealth and influence by protecting the monarchy, and then the monarchy will protect them. Well, when that option is no longer available to them, they recognize that they had to be pragmatic and they had to make alliances with the Maoists now in power and the Marxist-Leninists and stuff, right? So the Marxist-Leninists and Maoists, I think in Nepal, I'm not sure if I know the history well enough to maybe make a good judgment about it, but it seems to me they were maybe not protecting the gains that they won in the revolution enough. They had to make some compromises with the bourgeoisie to bring, to deliver things for the people, right? Because if they took over power and then things got worse, then the people would say, this was disaster supporting you, and things would just go back to the way they were. But unfortunately, they trusted their bourgeoisie too much, and it seems like they've been stabbed in the back over time. Another important thing is there was an earthquake in, I got to remember the year here. This earthquake is extremely important because they had just, I think it was 2015 in Nepal. There was like 10,000 people died, and they were trying to write their constitution for years, and they were having a hard time coming to an agreement on it, like trying to do the process fairly. If you're going to write a constitution for the country, it should not be a quick, let's figure this out in a weekend.
Yes. Can I just interject for a second so we can say good night to Cowboy Kitty? Phone's about to die.
Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll try and shout out your fundraiser thing at the end. But yeah, thanks for watching. Take care. Sorry, I just kind of lost my train of thought a bit. What was I saying? The earthquake. That's okay. So the earthquake kind of pressured them to try and hurry up the constitution right? Like they finalized the constitution quickly, and they were actually, this is where I need to maybe find the right tab for this if I'm going to be getting into this. Like the India did a really nasty thing while Nepal was trying to finalize its constitution, and this earthquake happened. They were doing an unofficial blockade on the border for when they needed supplies, emergency supplies to take care of the victims and stuff and rebuild. India decided to kick them while they were down so that they could take advantage of the political situation and gain influence at the expense of Nepali sovereignty and independence, right? So that's an extremely important factor not to forget. And I think it kind of like cut off their revolution a little bit at the knees, in that they didn't get ultimately the constitution that they were looking for. They had to make compromises because they were just in between a rock and a hard place, whatever. So these kinds of things happen, you know, as much as we are supportive of the people struggle there, we have to recognize that mistakes do get made when people take power. So let me switch over to this one here. So this is from the People's Dispatch. Have you ever heard of Vijay Prashad? This is who I've thought of as a go-to. He's an Indian Marxist, and I've found some of his commentary interesting. I don't necessarily agree with him on everything, but I don't know everything about him either. I just find he's a media personality I think we've all kind of seen here and there, and we can see what he has to say about it. Because him being kind of growing up in the region and stuff, he probably knows a lot more about the situation than someone like me ever could trying to figure it out. So says 5 theses on the situation in Nepal. Following the resignation of Nepali Prime Minister KP Oli amid mass youth-driven protests, different narratives have circulated which simplify and misrepresent the complexities and reality on the ground in Nepal at the roots of this crisis. This was written on September 11th by Vijay Prashad and Atul Chandra. If your house is not clean, then the ants will come through the door and draw in the snakes. Maybe could have named the stream that. That sounded like a good soundbite, but I just came up with whatever the title that I have. So the crisis in Nepal escalated in early September, bringing down the center-right government of Prime Minister KP Oli. The immediate spur was the regulation and banning of social media on September 4th. Protests over this action were met by police firing, which resulted in the killing of 19 protesters. This escalated into major manifestations, leading to attacks on the homes of politicians and the National Parliament building, as well as the presidential building. Several narratives are circulating about the current upheaval, but 2 dominate. Systemic governance failure, that years of unmet promises, corruption, and opportunistic alliances produced a legitimacy crisis, not for this or that party, but for the establishment. The present upsurge is explained as a popular backlash due to the cumulative neglect. And the color revolution thesis, which I guess is the one that we've kind of come out hard with. So that the protests are engineered by an external force, most of the fingers pointing at the United States, and that the U.S. Congress National Endowment for Democracy's funding towards Hami, Nepal. I think there's probably elements of both. Usually, like the forget who said it earlier, but usually there need to be problems for a color revolution to be possible. They need to exploit the existing problems. So both theories make it easy for the stakeholders within Nepal to deflect responsibility either onto foreign meddlers or onto a vague idea of the political class. There is no discussion in these theories of the underlying bourgeois order and its problems in Nepal. A century-long patronage economy, the control of land, finance, and government contracts in the hand of an oligopoly with close ties to the monarchy and a growth paradigm depending on the export of migrant workers and of debt-financed infrastructural development. So this export of migrant workers is another thing that kind of makes this country uniquely exposed to manipulation by the West, is because they've got all these workers that are remitting the money back to Nepal. They need electronic access to do that. And so that's kind of I'm sure something that the U.S. is well aware that that's a lever that they can use to manipulate people. So The structural sources of people's grievances are flattened into simplistic but evocative concepts such as corruption and color revolution. Neither of these theories are totally incorrect or correct, but are only partial, and their partiality can be very misleading. This article cannot by itself correct that partiality, but it hopes to offer some ideas for discussion. The 5 theses below are intended only to frame the debate that we hope will be held not only over Nepal's predicament, but that of many countries in the global south. So let's just read these 5 theses, and we'll see what else I can get into before wrapping up. So, mismanagement of the opportunity. After the new constitution was enacted in Nepal in 2015, there was immense hope that the broad left would be able to advance the social situation of Nepalis. Therefore, in 2017, the various communist parties won 75% of the seats in the national parliament. The following year, the larger communist parties joined together to form the Nepal Communist Party. Although the unity was not very deep because the parties had their own structures and their own programs and could not truly form a unified party, but mainly a unified electoral bloc. The lack of a common program for communist political activity and a common agenda to solve the people's problems through the instrument of the state led to the dissipation of the opportunity provided to the left. So to me, this situation, the history of Nepalese communists being in power with political parties is an excellent learning opportunity for any other communist groups around the world to see what kind of things can happen through the electoral strategy for as far as success, and what are the limitations of that, whatever. What do we have to guard against if we're going to take that route for taking power? What do we need to ensure that we achieve or avoid, right? And so if we're going to unify people in some kind of coalition, the unity has to be deep, right? Because it's not really going to last, and it's going to fragment, and it will turn into a power vacuum kind of thing. So always interesting to see what's going on in the world around us. So the Unified Party split in 2021, and since then the various left parties rotated in power, which people saw as individualism and opportunism. So that's the other thing, is that no matter what the actual truth is, the people will decide what they see, whether that's the truth or not, and the consequences will be there. When the Home Minister Narayan Kaji Shrestha of the Maoist Center tried to use the instruments of the state to investigate corrupt practices, even in his own party, he was hounded out of office. So these are the kinds of things where if we're wanting to make a defense of the regime that got overthrown, if that's kind of the stuff that happened, whatever, it doesn't do us any good to try and defend them when they were actively avoiding the things that they need to do to actually take care of corruption and stuff like that, whatever. That is a mistake, right? You need to not be hounded out of office when you're using the state to investigate corrupt practices if you want to earn the trust of the people and keep it. So, but easier said than done. It's easy for us to criticize when we're out of power, isn't it? So, since 2024, the government in Nepal included a rightist fraction of the left, led by KP Oli, and the one fraction of the right, the Nepali Congress, which made it a center-right government. So that kind of sounds like a little bit of a red-brownist kind of shit happening, and sometimes it's like you don't have any good options, but that doesn't change the consequences. So the long fight for democracy that began with the 1951 revolution deepened with the 1990 Jana Andolan, and then appeared to be cemented with the 2006 Lok Tantra Andolan, only appears to be defeated when in fact that long struggle will reappear in another form. This is the truth, right? As much as it's easy to get nihilistic and stuff, or we're never gonna, what's the point in being revolutionaries, because we're only gonna end up being defeated or whatever. The whole point is that this is a very long struggle, right? And it does, like, just because things are not looking good right now, that's no reason to be too pessimistic, right?
That's why you gotta raise your children right.
Exactly. You gotta this is a long struggle, whatever. You gotta prepare them to carry on the mantle, whatever. Because if you're not preparing your kids to support like our politics, who is going to prepare them to support which kinds of politics? I really don't want my kids turning out to be fascists, okay? that right to push back against that. So, number 2, failure to tackle the basic problems of the people. The problems in Nepal in 2015, when the new constitution was adopted, were grave. A massive earthquake in Gorkha devastated the province, leaving over 10,000 people dead and rendering hundreds of thousands homeless. At least a quarter of Nepalis lived under the poverty line. Caste and ethnic discrimination created a great sense of despair. The Madhya region along the Nepal-India border was particularly angered by the sense of disadvantages and then by an analysis of being further marginalized by the 2015 constitution. Excuse me. Weak public health care and education, underfunded for a century by that goddamn monarchy that's so important we need to bring it back so that they can underfund education so that you don't understand why the people in power should not be in power. Okay? They could not meet the aspirations of the emerging middle class. So victims of our own success is one of the problems of communist movements. The governments did put forward various policies to address some of these issues, lifting large sections of the population from poverty. Child poverty went from 36% in 2015 to 15% in 2025, and from infrastructural abandonment. So electricity access now at 99% and at a registered improvement in the Human Development Index. So that's interesting because you were talking earlier about they have so much more potential for kilowattage, whatever, but this is one of the things about, like, people want to say that this government needs to be removed because they haven't done shit for us or whatever. If you actually look, oftentimes the government that the US wants to target, it's because they are successful. It's the danger of a good example. They are not,
Yes.
like, the US empire cannot allow a good example to thrive, to show people the way forward. So they have to smash it every time it shows itself. So guess what's happened?
Absolutely. And I should have noted that what I was speaking of about the natural resources, that is an article from 2018. So maybe still they were at a measly 600 megawatts.
Right.
They can't, I'm sure even if they produce more, that's a far cry from 83,000.
Yeah, but I'm just like, it's important to recognize what kind of a population you're talking with or whatever. I'm sure that this is a country that can't really ever have a huge population if they live up in the mountains and stuff like that. So, I mean, but that's another thing actually. Their population has like doubled since the Maoists took over and stuff. So they've been a rising star kind of thing, and it's sad to see them cut down.
In 2018, that's the reference. Nepal is the 48th largest nation in the world with a population of around 26.4 million people.
Yeah, I had another article. I don't know if I was going to get to it, but it was talking about the economic success of the country in the last little while. And like, that's one of those things, like, you can say the things like, I'll see, what does it say in this article here? There remains, however, a huge gap between the expectations and the reality, with inequality rates not dropping fast enough and migration at startlingly high levels. So you can blame the individual country for not succeeding enough, but you have to keep the context of the global economy in mind, as if what's been happening in the last few years, whatever, the entire global economy has been completely thrown into disarray because of the Trump administration and the Biden administration, and right. And so for people to be criticizing their government for not handling the global economic turmoil very well, it's like a little bit disingenuous. Like, no matter what kind of a government is in power, these are extremely difficult circumstances it's a hard storm for any government to weather. So people should kind of be a little bit fair, to the people that they're charging with incompetence and corruption, like, anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that YouTube video, Jack. I saved it so I can go back and look at it.
Okay.
You can also put it in the Discord if you
Okay. So, where was I here? Corruption levels also remain too high in the country as corruption perceptions deteriorated, ranked 107 out of 180 in 2024. Corruption, inequality, and inflation could not be contained by the government, which made very poor deals for trade and for finance. The return to the IMF's extended credit facility narrowed its fiscal possibilities. So it's always a bad idea to accept anything from the IMF, but sometimes a country has put in a position where they don't really have a choice and they fuck themselves over no matter what. It's just what happens because the US still has too much power. So let's try and correct that. But how do we do that? That's very difficult. So number 3, the tendency to seek refuge in the idea of the Hindu monarchy. The Nepali petty bourgeoisie, which sent their children to English medium schools and often come from oppressed or backward Hindu castes, are frustrated by the continual domination of upper castes and are inspired by the right-wing Hindutva petty bourgeoisie politics of India's Uttar Pradesh, one of the states that borders Nepal. So that's interesting in that I wouldn't have caught that, like not having grown up with the like living through the caste system myself, I wouldn't really be able to recognize that some of the oppressed or backward Hindu castes are frustrated by the but their frustrations are actually just like we have all these petty like lumpen proletariat in the West or whatever. Their frustrations actually drive them into the right wing politics when you would think that their frustrations would drive them away from the right wing politics. This weird thing that happens with badly like misinformed people, they allow their frustrations to kind of worsen the situation by supporting the opposite of who they should be supporting, basically. So, but that's got everything to do with like the psychological conditioning of the conditions that we grow up in, right? That's where Marx says like man like writes his own destiny or whatever, but we don't choose our own conditions. I kind of paraphrase that, but that's an important thing to remember. So that is why there are many posters in the protests of Yogi Adityanath, the leader of India's right-wing Bharatiya Janata Party, which we talked about the other week, and the leader of the Uttar Pradesh government. This fraction of the population is also in the mood to return to monarchy, which is a Hindu monarchy. Several political forces back these tendencies, such as the Pro-Monarchy Party and its broader allies, the Joint People's Movement Committee, formed in March 2025 as part of the return to monarchy protests. Shiv Sena Nepal Vishwa Hindu Mahasabha. My bad. Pronunciation is awful. Since the 1990s, the Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, the Indians' RSS international affiliate, has quietly built shakas, groups, and cadre since the 1990s. The HSS, along with a tentacular group of organizations such as the Shiv Sena and the RPP, has campaigned against secular policies and for a return to Hindu Raj. Rather than merely target secularism, the Hindutva bloc has focused attention on what it says is a revolving door of elites in Kathmandu that has held power ever since the monarchy was abolished in 2008. They frame their civilizational rhetoric around anti-corruption and charity, with mobilizations through Hindu festivals and through online influencers, as well as selective outreach to marginalized and oppressed castes in the name of Hindu unity. Which I'm sorry to the oppressed and marginalized castes, but I think that is a mirage that you should be staying the fuck away from. So this bloc, powerfully organized, unlike the youth, has the capacity to seize power and to restore order in the name of the Hindu state and the monarchy, bringing back authoritarianism in the name of anti-corruption, which is literally what we are fucking seeing right now, which is disgusting to witness. So, tired of the migration escape valve. If we ignore small countries such as Montserrat and St. Kitts and Nevis, Nepal is the country with the highest per capita rate of migration for work. That's an interesting statistic. With a population of 31 million, there are currently 534,500 Nepalis who work overseas. It says recorded because there are also people that the statistics don't cover that are probably doing that. 17.2 people per 1,000 Nepalese is working abroad. So the numbers have surged in recent years. In 2000, the recorded figure for Nepalese who obtained foreign employment permits was 55,000. Now it is 10 times higher. There was a new record in 2022-23 with 771,327 permits issued. So the what's ironic here maybe a little bit is typically our narrative is if you don't want these people to come here, stop bombing their country. Except in this particular case, they came here more because their country devolved into revolutionary violence for over a decade. But it wasn't the U.S. in this particular situation bombing the country or whatever. It was the people actually fighting to overthrow their own bourgeoisie and monarchy in a struggle of national liberation that should have been fought and should always be fought if that's the situation that you are facing. So large sections of youth are angry that they have not been able to meet their needs for employment within Nepal, but are forced to migrate and often to horrible jobs. A terrible incident in February 2025 took place in Yeonggam, South Korea, when a 28-year-old migrant, Tulsipun Magar, likely committed suicide because the employer at the pig farm where he worked kept revising the wage rate downwards. Tulsi came from the Gurkha community in Pokhara, Tulsi Gabbard, I think. Interesting.
Oh, yeah?
In the wake of our, Tulsi Pon Magar. So that's not Tulsi, correction, not Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, okay, because I was like, isn't she Hawaiian?
Yeah. Sorry, my bad for the confusion.
No worries.
In the wake of his suicide, reports came that 85 Nepalese have died in South Korea in the past 5 years, half of them by suicide. So that sounds like a situation needs to be some awareness brought to. News of stories such as these increased the frustration and anger at the government. Online, many shared the sentiment that the government was more considerate of foreign direct investors than of its own migrants, whose investment in Nepal through remittances is far higher than any foreign capital. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, because there's lots of different things to get into, but there is another thing I've been kind of raging about is I gotta find the there's these like a trade dispute. There's a border dispute between Nepal and India, and Nepal's been making some moves to reclaim or claim the sovereignty that's disputed. And China and India are trying to like trade through this corridor that's disputed. And that's kind of that's maybe a bit of like an elephant in the room. That's why would this another reason why is this color revolution happening? It probably has everything to do with it. So number 5, the external influences of the United States and India. The center-right government of KP Ali had been close to the United States. Nepal had joined the U.S. government's Millennium Challenge Corporation. I feel like we probably
dropped at the church an hour late.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'm going mute.
Okay. Sorry. Back to my. So this Millennium Challenge Corporation, we should probably learn about that. That sounds interesting, but that'll be for another time. So the Nepal had joined that MCC in February 2017, a decision by a left government that was hugely contested by large sections of the left. Due to the pressure from below, Nepal's government stayed away from the NCC, but Ali's center-right government welcomed John Wingle, deputy vice president of the MCC, to Kathmandu in August 2025 to hold talks about resumption of U.S. aid and to discuss the continuation of infrastructural projects. Meanwhile, India's far-right government of Narendra Modi sought to promote the role of the Hindu nationalist far-right party in Nepal, which has thus far been at the margins. If there was any external activity in the 2025 protests, it is more likely that India and not the U.S. had a hand in the events. This is kind of why I found it very informative to be watching Brian Berletic's video that points the finger squarely at the U.S., but my own suspicions about what's going on here, as far as what little I've come to know about this region, is that India has a lot of influence in this kind of a situation. It was basically, I have the kind of same suspicion that it's more likely that India, not the U.S., had a hand in the events, although it is more likely that they both have hands in it, wherever. We just have to understand what the different motivations between these two parties are, because India and the U.S. obviously not the same, whatever, or not the same. They're not the same force, okay, in world events. So you need to understand the difference in their character. So, however, even here, it is possible that the far right wing in Nepal will merely take advantage of the collapse of the oligarch government and the enormous sentiment against corruption. It's important to recognize that no home or office of the RPP was attacked, whereas in March, the RPP cadre attacked one communist office, foreshadowing of what happened in September. The army appears to have restored some calm in Nepal, but this is a calm that is one of disorder and danger. What comes next is to be seen. It will take time for the dust to settle. Will the army invite one of the online celebrities to take over, such as Kathmandu Mayor Balendra Shah? The protesters have suggested Sushila Karki, who is a highly respected former Chief Justice. I think this is a mistake a little bit by Vijay Prashad and Atul Chandra. They uncritically just said that the protesters suggested that it was Sushila Karki. But I don't think it's really the protesters suggesting that. I think that's the U.S. and the India suggesting that. So just my little mild critique of article that I otherwise mostly agree with. So she made a career of being independent of political parties, apparently. These are caretaker choices. They will not have the mandate to make any significant changes. They will pretend to be above politics, but that will only disillusion people with democracy and plunge the country into a long-term crisis. I think they meant that will only disillusion people with hopes for democracy or something like that, and plunge the country into their crisis. So a new prime minister will not solve Nepal's problems. So just to quickly, sorry, I know I've been kind of going on and on and on and on, but I hope that this has been revelatory for those of you watching. Here it is. So this is the last thing I wanted to talk about, just to try and leave no stone unturned. So I see, Sean, you're saying, this is interesting as fuck. I wonder how much U.S. foreign intervention promoted this. Yeah, exactly. This is like pulling back the rug and finding all the roaches under it. It's like I went to go do this research. I was like, wonder what I'm going to find. Then I found all this information. I'm like, I got to share all of this with you guys. So I hope you appreciate it.
I missed it because my mom, I was dealing with something with my mom. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it because it was getting real interesting, especially I missed everything after the terrain between Nepal and India that they're fighting over.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get into that here now.
Okay. But still, I'm sure you said some other stuff.
Yeah, but
this
is important context. If you're not really aware of this, you might not quite understand why would they feel there's a need for any kind of revolution in the first place. Whatever, it might have something to do with this kind of stuff. So Nepal's China visit overcast by Lipulek and GSI disputes, analyzing the diplomatic challenges, by Omar El Saeed, September 8th, 2025. Nepal's diplomacy tested as border dispute and security initiatives strain relations with China and India. Nepal's recent diplomatic efforts have been overshadowed by escalating tensions and security interests. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli's trip to China, intended to bolster Nepal's position on the international stage at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, rather became entangled in disputes over Lipulek and the Global Security Initiative. I think this might be machine translated, so there's a bunch of spelling errors, but it's okay. The Lipulek controversy. The immediate catalyst for friction was the recent agreement between India and China to reopen a vital trade route through the Lipulek Pass. This pass, situated near the tri-junction of India, China, and Nepal, is a territory Nepal claims as its own. So that sounds like a big deal to be brushed over. And oh no, this is just about social media bans. And this is what about the youth wants their voices heard. What about the vital trade route? That's a territory dispute. That's a huge deal, or whatever. That's like war-causing kind of problems, right? People go to war over that shit, whatever. We don't pretend like that's not happening. So Kathmandu swiftly responded by dispatching diplomatic protests to both Beijing and New Delhi prior to Prime Minister Ali's departure for the SCO summit. During a bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, Prime Minister Ali reportedly voiced strong objections to the reopening of the pass without Nepal's consent, citing the 1816 Sugali Treaty, another important thing to look into. But let's just kind of sum that up with British colonial treaties always fuck things up for 200 years at least. Let's just, there's definitely the colonial baggage that is at play here. So,
Dang, I missed a lot.
Yeah.
According to the chat.
Well, I didn't.
They're still kind of discussing what this, I guess.
Oh, hey, Michael Pan, what's up? Yeah, so I'm not seeing the chat because I'm on the other tab reading. So.
Right.
I'm just trying to get through this. I think this will be the last one that I share because we're over 3 hours now. So, as historical, the 1816 Sugali Treaty, they cited as historical justification for Nepal's claim. However, the official Chinese statement following the meeting conspicuously omitted any mention of the Lipulek dispute, a point noted by members of the Nepali delegation who suggested that China prioritized its own agenda. President Xi reportedly characterized the dispute as a bilateral issue to be resolved directly between Nepal and India, a position that drew criticism from observers who felt Nepal's concerns were downplayed. I personally, just from off the top of my head, I don't really feel like China is being a very good actor in this situation where they're kind of, it seems to me like they're choosing the things that they're doing with BRICS is more important than respecting Nepal's concerns in this situation. So Nepal is being neglected because, sorry, but we have to give India what they want because we're doing this big de-dollarization thing. So sorry, not sorry, Nepal, whatever. So take that for what you will, right? The global the Global Security Initiative and Nepal's position. Adding to the diplomatic complexity, the Chinese Foreign Ministry asserted that Nepal recognizes China's Global Security Initiative, a broad framework viewed by some as a counterweight to U.S. influence. This claim promptly raised eyebrows in Kathmandu, as Nepali officials were fast to refute any endorsement of the GSI. That's pretty strange. That's like Nepal's like, we're not down with your global security military alliance thing. Why would you fucking say that? We are. And what's wrong, man? I thought you were totally down with we're trying to, the alliance we're trying to force you into. It's like weird stuff happening just before a revolution. So they maintain Nepal has consistently refrained from aligning with security-related initiatives, previously declining participation in the U.S. Indo-Pacific Strategy, the State Partnership Program, and even BIMSTEC military exercises. I don't know what those are so much, but you can always find out. So despite denials from within Prime Minister Ali's inner circle, Nepal has yet to issue an official rejection of China's claim, perhaps emboldening the Chinese position by implication. This reluctance to directly contradict Beijing is speculated to be a tactic to avoid friction during the SCO summit, but risks jeopardizing relationships with key partners like India and the United States, both of which view the GSI with apprehension. So here we have Nepal caught, just like India was, or whatever, like all countries trying to do this balancing act between the bipolarity of China versus the US. You're going to get fucked eventually when you think that you can balance between these two forces that have you in a tug of war. you're not going to be able to do the balance forever. You're going to have to pick a side, or you're just going to get fucked over when you don't pick either side or whatever. Both sides are going to turn on you or whatever, right? So all these eagerness to align with China. So it looks like he made his decision. He wanted to go with China or whatever. And then the U.S. was like, no, fuck you. We're getting rid of you. So further fueling perceptions. Like, it's funny how you can sum it up or whatever, but you have to sort of read a shit ton to be able to make that kind of a quick, pithy little statement, right? So further fueling perceptions of a pro-China tilt, Prime Minister Ali readily accepted an invitation to participate in a military parade in Beijing, commemorating the end of Japanese aggression, an event initially offered to President Ramchandra Podel, who declined due to its politically charged nature and Nepal's strong ties with Japan. It's almost like the fascists really want Nepal to stay in their camp, and they really don't want Nepal to actually be like
know
communist.
your place.
Yeah.
Yes, know your place, and that place is a democracy.
Yeah. So this decision contrasted with President Podel's more cautious approach and has reportedly caused unease in Tokyo. Here's a brief comparison of the key events. Yeah, there's that little table of stuff. I'm just going to skip past that. You can pause and read it later if you want or something. So I'll just do that nice and slow. Did you know Nepal shares a vast 1,751.6 kilometer border with China and a 565 kilometer border with India, making it a strategically important nation in South Asia? Why did I read that? Why did they put that there? I didn't really need that right now. Implications for Nepal. Analysts believe Prime Minister Ali's trip represents a missed possibility to secure a firm commitment from China regarding Nepal's sovereignty over Lipulekh. The lack of a clear Chinese position arguably strengthens India's hand in maintaining the status quo of trade through the disputed pass. See, I don't really understand why China wouldn't want to secure this firm commitment. I don't think it really works in China's best interests to allow India to kind of further its Hindutva vision there. I don't think that strengthens China's position in negotiations with India. So I don't know why. We don't know what they're talking about in their backroom deals, right? So who knows? So the trip is likely to be viewed internationally as another instance of a Nepali leader prioritizing relations with China, potentially at the expense of other important partnerships. Yeah, we should look into the Sagali Treaty, but not today. The ongoing geopolitical dynamic between Nepal, China, and India is rooted in historical treaties, strategic interest, evolving regional power balances. Nepal, as a landlocked nation, relies heavily on both India and China for trade and transit. And as we said about the mountains, it means that they're kind of more heavily reliant on India. So maintaining a neutral and balanced foreign policy is crucial for Nepal's economic stability and national security. But like I said, you can't balance between, in certain situations, you just cannot maintain a neutral stance. So the Lipulekh dispute highlights the sensitivity of border issues and the importance of diplomatic dialogue. China's GSI represents a broader effort to reshape the global security architecture and challenge U.S. influence. Understanding these broader trends is vital for interpreting Nepal's current diplomatic challenges. So that's enough of that. I'm going to take a break from talking
now. So bam. I didn't know anything about this prior, and now I feel like I've been schooled. You took me to church because we had made the decision that he was going to do all the research on Nepal, and tomorrow we're going live at 1. I put it down there on the ticker just to let everybody know we're going live with JB Font tomorrow. And I was doing all the research for that show, so that's why I didn't learn anything about Nepal today. So tomorrow, Michael will be blind reacting, and it's really nothing to blind react to because all this stuff has just been kind of boiling over and tumbling over. But it might just be some things that you haven't seen before or what have you.
Yeah, I have not
but
been.
It's the
like
morality of America.
Yeah, with the Trump assassination thing that I kind of went down those rabbit holes when it was happening, as it was happening. But this time around, I was like, no, I got some other things I want to be looking into. I don't need
Dealing
to
with,
do the whole
yes.
Charlie Kirk conspiracy stuff, right? I did a little bit of
Yes.
it, but I didn't do it hardcore yet.
Well,
So.
this is less about the conspiracy stuff and more about uh, where we're headed as a society with all the things that have been going on around us socially. Like what kind of, I don't like to call America a melting pot. It's more like a salad because everybody should keep their own, culture within them. A melting pot to me sounds like assimilation. And it shouldn't be assimilation. It should be more like loving your own culture and sharing and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
I think
anyway,
back on that. That's like the imperialist narrative of the U.S. This is what we want the U.S. to be. Whatever. I don't think the Americans
right.
themselves should embrace that propaganda.
Well, some do, and I guess that'll be discussed tomorrow. So yeah, if you guys are available 1 p.m. Central, come on in and talk to us. And oh, hi, Bad Cookies.
Yeah. Hello,
And
goodbye, cookies. We're almost wrapping up here, but good
yeah,
to see you as always.
here's the as promised to Cowboy Kitty. Um, they're doing some good work over there. They've raised they're like one for almost half of their goal. Oh no, about 1/4 of their goal. But getting there. Oh, Cowboy Kitty's here. He must have charged his phone. Oh, he's only at 1%. So you've been hanging in there.
Nice.
So yeah, if you can, please support him and his families. Trying to bring I think it's his cousin, correct?
Sister-in-law, I believe.
Sister-in-law. Sister-in-law. Okay. So Lance, it will be right here on our channel at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. Yes, I don't know what that is specific, but y'all could do the math. I didn't know if it. So I secretly I was like trying to get to the end of the deep dive. And there's like 10 minutes on there. I could just let it play or we could just cut it off right now. But I thought it was interesting because he's not talking about Nepal anymore. Oh, lost him. He's not talking about Nepal anymore. He's like tying it all back into all these other color revolutions or straight up coups or what have you that the United States has its hands in, and just saying like, if they could do all of these things, what do you think they could do in Nepal type of thing. So if y'all want me to play it, and then cut off the live, we could do that, or we could just cut it off now. But I did put it in the chat, and it was a request, Michael. Oh, you're not here. Sean, I saw your request about putting all the links in the. Oh. Sean, I saw your request to put all the links in the description. So we will, after the live ends, Michael and I will work to do that. We should do that every time, but I don't know. We go on so long, and then it's late, and we kind of just say our goodbyes. But Cowboy Kitty is saying his Natalia. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's kind of going crazy, and I can only imagine. I can only imagine. So, if you guys have it to give, please give. And Nahiro is saying he lost his mic. First, he lost his camera. Now he lost his mic. So I guess I'll be going out by myself. Natalia. Natalia. Thank you. Interesting. That's a very pretty name. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and play the ending because this has been very, very interesting. Yes, Michael, at least you got through your presentation. So, and it was quite the presentation. So thank you very much for that. So here we go. The deep dive is the last 10 minutes, and then I'm just gonna, shut down the chat. And before I play that, I want to acknowledge what Cowboy Kitty is saying. Oh, oh my gosh, the emotional strain that's taking on all the members of your family, I can't even imagine. Because every day you're thinking about her. What's she doing now? How are they treating her? What's our path forward? These are just things that I'm thinking that you're asking yourself. I don't know what you're asking yourself, but I don't even know what to say. All I can say is I wish the best for the outcome that you guys deserve. So yeah, here we go with and we love you too, by the way. Here we go with the last 10 minutes, and then I'll be shutting it down. But I just thought this might be interesting to listen to. Okay, here we go.
We don't. In reality, we don't. I remember as a kid in high school, even as a young U.S. Marine of voting age, I had no idea what was going on, had no idea what I was doing, had no idea why I was really voting for George Bush during the first and only presidential election I participated in. It was only until later when I woke up that I realized I was manipulated. I was duped. I can admit it. You need to admit it. You need to wake up and face reality. Or the U.S. is just going to take advantage of your ignorance, your arrogance, your sense of self-importance, and they're going to use that against you to destroy you and everything around you, as they have now just done in Nepal. Now, securing information space. I've been saying this over and over again for many years. In the 21st century, information space is a national security domain. It is as important as defending your land borders, your airspace, and your shores. Not defending your information space, allowing a foreign social media platform to control the flow of information inside your country is the same as just not just opening your land borders, but having U.S. troops guard it and decide who can and cannot come through and why. It would be like allowing the United States to control your airspace like Qatar has done. And then you're surprised that Israeli warplanes unimpeded come and drop bombs in the middle of your cities and kill people. That is what it is like if you leave your information space unsecured. You need to pass strict NGO laws that stop the U.S. from funding these organizations. You need to expose them, cut them off, and fully uproot them. You need to create your own indigenous social media platforms, work with countries like Russia and China that have already done it. They will help you do it. They will make money off of it. You will make money off of it. All the money Google and Facebook and X are taking out of your country through social media, you could be making that money and keeping it in your country. Create a pipeline so that young people interested in politics, media, policymaking, international relations, they can go to school, learn from professors that are invested in the interests of your country, not having gone over to the West, studied, and now come back representing Western interests of your actual country. Create a pipeline that take these young people and connect them with careers in all of these respective fields so that you have a media, a legal system, an education system, a foreign ministry or Department of State that is actually pursuing your own country's best interests, not America's, at your own expense. All of these things need to be done to secure your information space and utilize it to reach your country's fullest potential. In a lot of ways, the way China is doing right now. And I have always said that Russia and China have done this. They have secured their information space. They already export weapons to help countries protect their other national security domains like land borders, airspace, shores. Why aren't they exporting the means to defend and protect and secure their partners' information space? It seems like there needs to be a very drastic, I would even say revolutionary paradigm shift in this regard. We're in the 21st century, but far too many nations are still thinking in a 20th century mindset, and it is costing them their country. Nepal is the latest victim. And again, when these protests start, identify the leaders, identify where the funding is coming from. It does not matter whether a protest is good or bad or who is involved, it still requires leadership and resources. It is coming from somewhere, identify from where. I just showed you is coming from the United States. Overwhelming evidence suggests that the vast majority of these groups involved were funded by the US, and they use the exact same template that has been used repeatedly, admittedly, from Serbia to the Arab world, to Ukraine, and more recently, Hong Kong, and even Indonesia. People telling me about human agency, I will respond by saying it doesn't matter what you think you're out there protesting for. I asked them, they said they're upset about corruption. They didn't say anything about the US funding them. The vast majority of the people at these protests get duped into them. They don't know that it's US funded. They're not getting paid. They've been wrapped up in it. It's the whole point of controlling information space is to stir people up. They're really stirred up. It's just the intentions behind it are malicious. It doesn't matter what they think they're out there for. It only matters why they are actually out there. And if a US-backed movement, US-funded agenda, put them out into the street, that is why they're actually out there, even if they think it isn't. This is a form of marketing. We see the damage marketing does all around the world, how it convinces people to buy products they don't need, products that are unhealthy, even products that make you sick and can eventually kill you, like alcohol and cigarettes. And so it's the exact same process. As a matter of fact, that is admittedly so. And I've showed this article many times from 2004. U.S. campaign behind the turmoil in Kiev. Also not an organic, spontaneous protest, completely engineered by the United States. And it even says, the campaign is an American creation, a sophisticated and brilliantly conceived exercise in Western branding and mass marketing that in 4 countries in 4 years has been used to try to salvage rigged elections and topple unsavory regimes. And that these are all just euphemisms for elections that didn't turn out the way the US wanted and governments that don't listen to us. That's what that actually means. And they talk about how it's all funded by the US government through the National Endowment for Democracy. But the main key is marketing. It's marketing. It's branding. It is appealing to people emotionally, not rationally, not objectively. That's what's going on here. And you have to understand that. So I hope that people start catching on. It's very discouraging to see it in 2025, the US having done this so often. Admittedly, they admit that this is what they do. And the template is so obvious to spot. And then you can find the actual names of the organizations and you can see on their own website admitted US funding, and people are still saying, I don't see any evidence of it. I'm not convinced. Just because the US is funding them doesn't mean that they don't have their own agenda. I mean, yes, it does. History has proven it. There's not even one example of a nation where groups funded by the US government did this and the country turned out better. Unless, of course, the people in that country overturned whatever it was that they did. I'm going to leave it there. This has already been an excruciatingly long video. I felt the need to bury these people alive in the evidence. Don't expect them to change their mind, but I hope I convince other people who have open minds what just took place in Nepal and to be aware that this is a ever-present danger for other nations all around the globe. If you thought this video was useful, please like and share. Think about subscribing. It's free to do. It helps the channel grow. Check the video description below for other places you can find and follow my work. Everything in the video description is there, including all of these links that I just referenced, as well as for ways you can help support my work. I do not monetize any of my social media platforms, and I am not funded by any government grants or allotments. I depend on the support from my audience. You can support my work through Buy Me a Coffee and also Patreon to everyone who has been with us.
Thanks, Michael. You know I'm really bad at that.